It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy, Alex, and Jason are here. Jason's back from his adventures in New Zealand with stories to tell. Apple has a big announcement. Yellow. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a new free program that Alex says he loves. The story of the Untitled Goose Game. And then, of course, the rumors. There are lots of them. We'll cover them all and give you our predictions for what will happen in the next few months. Next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 860, recorded Tuesday, March 7th, 2023. It works in my head. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by ACI Learning. The military uses the most advanced technology in the world, making veterans uniquely qualified for IT jobs. Before 2030, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported IT will add over 667,000 positions. There's one for you. Learn more about IT training at go.acilearning.com/twit. Thanks for listening to this show as an ad-supported network. We are always looking for new partners with products and services that will benefit our qualified audience. Are you ready to grow your business? Reach out to advertise@twit.tv and launch your campaign now. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we talk about the latest news from Apple. But before we begin, this just in a special express package from London, England. Customs. I wonder what the customs declaration is.
What do you say it is? Yes.
Yeah.
Medical prosthetic.
It says gift bag.
Okay.
It's from James, a longtime listener. He says, for everyone, it is this, and I have one for each of you. So we'll forward those along. This is Johnny Ives' Red Nose that we talked about it a few weeks ago, designed for Red Nose Day, which is March 17th. And it snaps on. I thought we could do the whole show like this. It isn't, I have to say, not the best red nose I've ever had. Clever design, but I think the foam ones are better, to be honest with you. This is, but you know, what the hell? And inside it says scan for a surprise. So Red Nose Day is actually an important charitable day, which is funny because it's comic relief. And I believe it was started in the US, but it has become a bigger thing in the UK for some reason. But if you go to comicrelief.com/Red Nose Day, you can find out all about it. Get your red nose, donate if you wish. Everybody here wearing their red nose. Thank you, James. Now, let's see. Will we have time to get this to you? We're going to have to FedEx these out to get, because Red Nose Day is 10 days off. We're going to have to get these to you quick. Customs, it says it's a gift bag. Hello, Jason Snell, sixcolors.com. Welcome back from Kiwi Land.
You know, a panelist is never early or late. He arrives exactly when he intended to. I left you as Jason the Gray, but I return as Jason the White. I don't know. One does not simply walk into MacBreak Weekly. I'm out of jokes now. Sorry.
You shall not pass. Where's your staff? Your wizard staff?
It's true. I left it in the other room, but it is, yes, I was in New Zealand, the land of Lord of the Rings, and they won't let you forget it.
Did you see Hobbiton?
We drove past Mount Doom. We went to Hobbiton.
Drove past Mount Doom.
We did. There's the volcano that is, and you look at it and you're like, oh, that's it. It's very cylindrical.
Doom. Oh, that's
we drove past Mount Doom. We went to Hobbiton, and let's see, what else did we do? Oh, we went to the Weta Workshop in Wellington, which is where Peter Jackson's got all of his props. Yeah, we did. The Weta Cave, which is just in like a suburb in Wellington. It's adorable. Then we you went to a cafe afterward, and had a tea and a meat pie, as you do in the New Zealand cafe. It was great. Awesome.
Fun.
2 weeks, well spent. Could have spent 3, 4, 5 weeks there.
You did a walkabout, except you drove about instead of walking, but you did
about 1,500 miles. They're big islands. I mean, there's a lot of driving to be done. A lot of sights to be seen.
You did both. Is it correct to say both islands?
North and South Islands. Yeah.
Yeah, you did both.
Yeah, Yeah, I'd say South Island is more spectacular, but it's way down there. Like there's not much other
That's
than
where
the southern
Queenstown
tip of
is.
South America.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we spent 3 days in Queenstown, and we went to Milford Sound and took a Queenstown beer tour, which, if you've ever taken a wine tasting kind of tour, it's like that for beer. So at the end, you can't stand up anymore. Yeah.
Actually, it sounds
great.
really good. That sounds
and
delicious.
It was summer. And let me tell you, I like the idea of taking a plane somewhere where it's summer instead of winter.
I know.
Pretty good.
I know.
Pretty
it's
good.
been freezing here, so you
Yeah.
actually missed our California.
Yeah,
winter.
we missed about 5 inches of rain. I don't mind.
Yeah, and a lot of snow in the hills. Anyway, welcome back. It's great to have you back.
Thank you. Good to be here. What happened?
Nothing. The funny thing is nothing. We had good replacements. Marco Arment was on last week, which was a lot of fun. Of course, Dan Morin the week before that. So
awesome.
But nobody matches the Snell. So thank you for coming home.
Thank you. You shall not pass. There, I said it.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, you got it all in. And please don't call me Shirley. Oh no, that's another movie. And there's Andy Anako, believe it or not, from GBH in Boston. Hello, Andrew.
We've had first podcast. What about second podcast?
Second podcast. I like that. That's
this is 11Z's.
You missed one ahead. I'm there to cover.
On the West Coast, technically, MacBreak Weekly is 11Z's.
Yes,
there you go.
11Z's.
I don't know if they know about second podcast.
Yes, it's all one large long podcast to Mr. Alex Lindsay of Office Hours. Hello, Alex. Alex, you sent us some great, wonderful Mid-Journey images from last week, and you've been doing it for every show. And they're fun. They're good. I love what you do. Yeah. Did we use it last week, John Ashley? Yeah. Oh God, yes. He says. There it is.
Warm apple bath.
The warm apple bath.
It exudes, comfiness. Like it
was perfect.
Soothing. Yeah.
Alex is nice because he sends us 4, and we get to pick. And John Ashley picked that one. It was very, that was very.
Personally, it doesn't top one of the ones he sent for last week's twit with the
fetch.
The
fetch
dogs.
happens. Those are good too. Love those too. Well, it's not a requirement, but we sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good.
It's really fun. Yeah, it's really fun. Gosh, there are some stories, but mostly rumors. I hate to say it. Do you lead? So here's a question, Jason, longtime journalist. Do you lead with a rumor or you lead with the news?
No, I think the big breaking news of this week is that Apple has discovered a new color. They are calling it yellow. Yellow?
Is that a rumor or is that real?
No, it's real.
Nope. Got released.
It's real. Phone. This is the Apple Spring Color Refresh, where they say, "Oh no, we forgot a color for the lower cost iPhone, yellow." So now that's your winner. If you had that, if you in the lottery for what the color would be,
holy cow!
Come down and pick up your turkey. It's a yellow.
That is
iPhone.
So yellow.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can. There it is. Woof. They call me mellow yellow. It's sunshiny yellow. And it is available. Not though for you pros. No, you have to have subdued colors.
No, it's a bright color. It can't be in a Pro phone. No, we can't have that.
Too whimsical. Yes.
Okay, so that was a rumor that turned into fact. So that's good. You saved me. There you go. That's the news.
But that's something we have to add to the Apple annual metronome. That this is the second. Is this the second or the third year in a row that they've had a spring color for the iPhone?
Third, I think.
Sorry, thank you. Third, plus like an addition of, and here's our new spring line of watch bands, because it's fun. I'm glad this is old school Apple. I'm glad that they're still remembering that this is the same company that did that did iPod socks. This is it's okay to simply say that there's no real reason or need for us to add a yellow phone. It's not as though we're missing. There's a reason. Oh, that's why sales of the iPhone 14 were down. There are people who waiting for a yellow one who've been holding out. There you go.
The yellow colors, the spring colors tend to be kind of Easter eggy colors. So here's the spring watch band collection, which is kind of an orange sherbet, a lavender weave. The orange sherbet is is the sport band, the rubber band. A light blue. I would say robin's egg blue. Let's keep it in the spring, and egg yolk yellow. They're pretty bright.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pretty bright.
And all of us nerds are going to be like, come on, it's just colors. And it's true. They are just colors, but this is a fashion kind of thing. And not everybody buys a phone in the fall. And this will get them through the rest of the year. It also allows Apple to kind of re-engage and have some ads that are not the same old ads that about the same old phone. And I know, as silly as it is, a bit like, hey, it's yellow. Hey, everybody, it's yellow. But it does let them remind people like, hey, here's the iPhone, and maybe you want one now. And how about this? And if you don't like this color, we got some other colors. And look, as fashion-y and sort of silly from a tech perspective as it is, it obviously works for them, or they would not keep doing it.
Sure. Here is actually the official names: Sprout Green. Oh, please. I call that puke green. Canary Yellow, Olive Solo, Purple Fog. That's the lavender one. Those are the new ones. Okay. That's in the solo loops. And then the braided solo loops, we've got bright orange and olive braided. In the sport bands, we've got bright orange, olive. So I guess, okay. I guess there's nothing new for the high-end watches. We're going to just stick with the same old colors. Maybe there's a new sport loop. No, nothing. Did they put out a press release?
Yeah, there's an item on Apple's press release. Yeah.
All right. Apple Newsroom. I should have gone there this morning. I don't know what I was thinking.
Hello, yellow. Again, yellow.
Hello, is yellow.
Mellow yellow. How yellow is your...
My idea of fun is like how many like YouTubers and whatever like had to haul their butts into Cupertino for a briefing because on the yellow iPhone, even though it's just it's yellow. Got it. Send me a photo. Good. Thanks. Got it. No. We really want to walk you through the. Okay. Here we go.
You think they did? No, come on.
Look, I can neither confirm or deny. No, Apple says. All I can tell you is that I might have spent 20 minutes pondering my yellow, harshing my mellow, and pondering my yellow.
What could you say about yellow that hasn't already?
Like I
been
said, I think it's an opportunity for them to re-engage on the phone and basically like
say,
talking about
hey,
what software. Yeah. And what software updates they've done recently, any features that they've added, but also just sort of, this is the lower end model. So I think that maybe a lot of reviewers are like, they cast it off in the fall because they're focused on the Pro phone. And, it's a chance we hear about the Plus sales flagging. Maybe it's a chance to point out the virtues of that Plus model as well. And, but in the end, it's just, it is Apple waving and saying, hey, over here, remember the iPhone? And
don't forget us.
It seems to work for them.
We're still here.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a reason. Also, remember that Samsung does their like big flagship drop in February, so that's getting people's attention. Google also chooses mid-season to do their A series phones, where they'll do like the Pixel 7, and then they'll do the like $400 7A, likely like usually in April and May. So I don't think Apple needs to necessarily compete necessarily, but it's an additional good excuse to make sure that you remind people that buying a new iPhone is something that they're capable of doing if they have like $700 or $800.
So you thought there wasn't any news this week?
There you go.
Hello, yellow.
Right on top of it. Breaking news. As timely as today's headlines.
How could I have missed it? All right, well, back to the rumors. No, there are.
I think Bennifer 2.0 has got it. I think they're both more mature. They're at a better place in their lives.
If she
can forgive the back tattoo, I think this is a winner here.
The back tattoo that says Jen Garner.
He has this really huge like tattoo that.
Oh God,
that was interesting.
Is it a tramp stamp if it's on a guy? Yes, I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say yes.
Descriptively, yes, because lower back tattoo just doesn't have the same sort of ring to it.
No, it doesn't rhyme.
No judging. No judgment.
It's just... Other news. Microsoft has made a redesigned Outlook available for free to all Mac users. No longer do you have to buy Microsoft 365. It is Apple Silicon based. I, of course, because I'm a dedicated journalist, downloaded it, installed it, got a little throw up in my mouth, and then deleted it. But
I'll tell you something crazy. I may actually install Outlook on my computer.
Why?
And here's why. The Exchange causes so much damage in mail for me that I think that I would like to just put anybody who interacts with me in Exchange in my company as Exchange server. Here's the problem is that there's certain things that Exchange does that nothing else does.
Right.
And it ruins, if you're in dark mode on Mail, what happens is Exchange explicitly defines the text color. It doesn't allow it to, or it can. You can get into a state where it's defining that. And so people will start, like, especially when people start coloring the text inside of their thing, which is evidently a Windows thing that people do all the time, drives me crazy. So people put, like, they start coloring names of like this person and this person to make it stick out. Well, the problem is you make that dark blue over and it defines that as dark blue and I can't see it.
What happens if you use Apple's Mail? It just doesn't show up?
It just shows up. Well, so there's a couple things. One is that it is Apple Mail just dark over dark, and so you can't see what they're doing. Great. And then the way it handles threads is just a disaster. The Exchange server's managing of threads inside of Mail is just and it doesn't happen anywhere else. Google Mail and all these other mail servers that don't have a problem with it, but Exchange just destroys it. And then the other thing that happens, which is unique, is that if you I create a lot of folders. So I create rules in folders. Put this here, put this here, put this here, put this here. I cannot do that if the person I'm talking to has an Exchange server, because it will copy it into a folder. And for whatever reason, however it deals with the Exchange server, it comes out as no content. So literally I see that they sent me an email and I have to go to my phone to figure out what they did. So I had to pull it all out. So I have to leave all my Exchange interactions in the main feed inside of Mail, because Mail, whatever I'm going to assume it's an Exchange server doing something funky, because everything else works. Every other mail service I use works except for Exchange, and it will not pass the content of the stuff to another folder inside of Mail. So as a result, I have been looking at I might just take my work email, because a lot of for whatever reason, both 090 and a lot of our clients are on the Exchange server, and it kind of screws up my mail. So I was thinking, I'll just take all the Exchange people and put them in Outlook.
And you can use Outlook. I connected it to Fastmail, and you can use it for your calendar contact and for email. It works with iMac. But you would say just use it for the. I mean, how can
I'm just going to use it for people that I.
Just
people that I deal with. I would just open it, I'll just use it for my work mail. I'll just put it in there by itself and not have any of the other stuff there. And then I just check it. It just means I'll check it less, because one has all these emails coming in, and then the other one, I got to open that up and take a look at it. So
agreement from IRC. Knox Harrington says, if you need to log into an Exchange server, it's still much better to use Outlook. Exchange is Microsoft's own mail server. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, even though other services definitely support it, I think I actually had that as my pick of the week. Because
sorry.
I thought that's okay. But because I do use Outlook as my mail provider. I've been using it for like 5 or 10 years. Actually, very very.
Outlook.com.
Well, no, I've Microsoft Office. My transferred my email domain to Outlook back when the one that I've been using for 15 years suddenly, maybe 50 megabytes of mail storage is not enough for me. Maybe I should find something that. But the thing is, it's a really good sign, because it is. I wasn't using it until a couple of months ago, because it was the typical Microsoft sort of arrogant user interface design, or rather, hey, because this is an Office type app, it has to run the same way on every single operating system. So as a result, on Mac, it really looked vomit inducing. It was really, really hey, look, everyone has bigger screens. That means we can put more buttons and more drop down menus and more things in here to make things more complicated. But they did streamline the design. It looks a lot more Mac like. It supports a lot more of the built in interface now. It sits alongside all of your other productivity apps really, really nicely. And I'll have to say that in terms of when you're getting a real industrial amount of email every single day, every single week, I like Outlook for its ability to really have intense tools for clearing it up and triaging things and scheduling things. I think it's a nice app, and now it's nicer to use, and it's free. You don't have to pay a monthly fee to use it.
Do they call it Inbox Sweep still? What do you use that? What is it that you use?
Yeah. Well, I like that it basically has two switches, rather two switches on your inbox. One in which stuff that it's pretty sure this is stuff that you want to know, and then the stuff where it looks like this is bulk email, not necessarily spam, but stuff that is not necessarily personalized towards you. And I found that to be very, very effective. The anti-spam features they've gotten a little bit squirrely in the past month, but that just shows how well the anti-spam has worked before then. That the fact that I'm noticing a couple of spam emails out of hundreds of emails a day, that shows you how well it was working before. I think that mail.app works great, but the way that most people get to use it in a power sort of position is when they learn how to integrate it with other Apple technologies, other Mac technologies, like again, making it part of a workflow or putting it into Automator or something like that. All the people who really use mail.app in that sort of same industrial sort of way are people who've customized it with their own scripts and their own workflows, which is great. I haven't actually tried workflows and stuff with Outlook yet. I don't know what the support is, but mail is something where it really is like dipping my hand into fire. Like I want to get my hand out of there as quickly as possible. So the idea of building tools to work on my mailbox is not something that I'm really inclined to do. So I'm not saying it's the greatest Outlook. It's not the greatest mail client that's ever been made for the Mac necessarily. I think that's going to be a very individualized decision, but I think that it's actually very, very good. It's no longer the afterthought. Well, okay, well we just the few last holdouts who are using Mac on a network, on an Office network that we haven't managed to lobotomize yet. We'll throw them a bone and let them use like the Windows 95 version of Outlook. It's actually a very good app, I
think. Jason, anything you want to say about Outlook?
I used to use it. Great. Like, I mean, I remember Entourage. That was also a thing. I think it's cool for them to make it free. I'm an
Entourage
person.
There's a name.
Entourage.
I have not heard.
There's a name I have not heard.
Crossing the streams. You're crossing the streams. We're in Lord of the Rings mode.
Sorry,
oh no! I introduced the Ghostbusters. I made it worse.
In a thousands of years ago in Middle Earth, there was an entourage, a fellowship, or an entourage, if you will, of the Ring. How about that? There you go. It's the entourage of the Ring.
One of them was played by Matt Dillon.
Yeah, it's a more bro-ier version of Lord of the Rings.
Okay. Now you've thrown me. All right, let's go back. Let's go back to the news. The news. The Untitled Goose Game. Cabel Sasser, we've talked about him many times before. Panic. He created that little thing with a crank that you love so much, Andy and Nico. Playdate. He also is well known for their really nice apps for the Macintosh. What is it? Transmit. What else does Panic do?
Sure. They used to have Coda, and now they have Nova, which is
Nova.
Their,
I still use from time to time.
Web development tool.
Yeah. Anyway. They also have a hit, which is good because frankly, those other programs probably don't make them a lot of money, called the Untitled Goose Game, which is a really good, fun game, which you could play on PCs. And I guess, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever played it on the Mac. You played on your consoles. Cabel tooted, which I like, on Mastodon, a short story yesterday. In fact, he says, a short story. We once submitted Untitled Goose Game to the Mac App Store because they thought, well, why, let Apple people download it from the App Store. It was rejected by the reviewer because they thought you couldn't skip the credits, which is a weird reason to reject it. So we explained that you could skip the credits. You could, in fact, by holding space. So the Apple said, oh, huh. And then rejected it for something else, and at that point we just gave up and never bothered to resubmit. The end.
Yeah, it's on Steam and Itch and stuff like that for the Mac. But
yeah,
they were going to put it in the Mac App Store. This says everything about Apple's, curation. That it's like one of these archetypal Mac App Store or App Store in general stories where things that shouldn't be in the stores are allowed in, and things that are perfectly fine and there's no reason that they should be rejected are rejected for reasons that are baffling or don't actually exist. You hear that you hear developers all the time saying they submitted something that's literally been approved 1 million times, and then suddenly they flag something that's not new and say this is in violation, or we couldn't get this to work right, or there were a bunch of Mastodon clients got rejected because they thought somehow that the client author was the owner of Mastodon and controlled the whole service. Like it's just one of those examples. Like, I'm not saying the App Store curation is not a hard job, but I'm saying like Apple's the one that forces it to be the curator of everything. And if they're going to do that, they need to do their job. And this is just yet another story of a stupid, a reviewer that's not paying attention, and you get a stupid rejection. It's ridiculous.
Stefan at gardenstate.social tweeted back, quote, "Please title your game." which would be,
Yes.
I could totally see it being the reason for rejection. Then somebody else said it is Apple has created the HOA, the Homeowners Association of Software. True. And honestly, if Apple is, and Neil Dash toots, success, fun prevented. If Apple, which is in fact, by the way, it's a great game. If you haven't played it, you get to play a goose.
So good.
Pestering a farmer, making a mess of things, just being annoying.
Ruining a whole town, yeah.
I love. Yeah,
you're the bad guy. It's great.
Yeah,
I got to say, just as an aside, that in the first 5 minutes, I was embarrassed and thrilled by how much fun I had just turning on a tap, forcing something, and then the farmer comes on and turns it off again, and then just simply turning it on again and forcing the farmer to come back and turn it off again. I am embarrassed by how much I enjoy just annoying this random non-player character. That's why
it's so much fun. Game. It's so much fun. But you're not going to get it at the App Store because Apple just, Apple doesn't like games. This is the problem. Apple is really trying to establish themselves. Didn't they invite a bunch of influencers just a couple of weeks ago to the campus to see games? Not the Untitled Goose Game, I'm guessing. Anyway, these things happen. What are you going to do?
I've submitted a couple apps to the store. It's taken between 2 and 4 submissions over 2 weeks to get them in. They give us back something, we fix it. They give us back something else, we fix it. And usually I can see, I may not agree with what they say, but I can understand what their thought process is. And, I've never had something not get in to the store. We just move things around until Apple's happy with it. I guess I have to admit that I work in a lot of countries. I live in a state where the only part of the state that I like is that my wife likes living here. So the thing is that, there's a lot of things that are imperfect in everything, and I think that, Apple can obviously do better. Everyone can always do better. It's a lot of people submitting things, into those things. And it's not just a matter of hiring more people. It is a matter of just a serious amount of flow, and it's just an intense amount of flow. And this is one sample. There are millions of people that seem to be able to figure out their way to get into it pretty effectively. And if I talk to other people that I've programmed with, or that I've worked with on submitting it. They can't remember a time that they couldn't get it in. I talk to people who work on apps that are, again, people that I know that are putting these things in, and they're like, sometimes you go back and forth a little bit and then you get it in. And they don't have.
I mean, I agree, and I
just want to make sure.
To be fair, Cabel never says why the second rejection happened, and it sure sounds like they just went, "Oh, fine, whatever," and get.
We have someone who can get a lot of, but there's millions of people that are figuring this out.
Well,
so the thing is,
they have other apps in the store, don't they? I mean, I'm not sure, but I think.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the app isn't like it's not the only game app in the store. There's lots of things out there, and so someone's figuring it out. And I guess I admit that I tend to be.
You're blaming Panic.
I'm just saying that if you're pragmatic about it and then you figure out how to make it work, you just get it in.
No, here's the truth of it. Panic has lots of games in the store, Alex. Panic has lots of, they have Firewatches in the store. They got lots of apps in the store. The fact is they were on all these other platforms. They're working with a development company. They're the publisher. They get to these 2 ridiculous rejections. And you know what they said? They said, the Mac App Store doesn't matter to us. Yeah. It doesn't matter to our business. It's not worth our time. We were going to do it to be nice, basically, and to say we were in another place. But that's actually one of the beautiful things about Mac App Store not being a monopoly is you can't do that in the iOS App Store. But in the Mac App Store, you can just say, you know what, it's not worth the aggravation. We're not going to give Apple any cut of our sales. We'll do it on Steam and Twitch instead. And they walked away. And of course they could have gotten it through, but I think it's telling that after 2 capricious rejections, they just said stick it and walked away, and quite rightly so.
They are on PC, they are on Mac via Steam, Itch, or Epic. They're on Nintendo Switch. They're on PlayStation 4. They're on Xbox One. But note, they are not on iOS.
Yeah, that was an important point. Realize that this company had the ability to walk away and say this isn't worth the trouble, A, because they're a big company and they have lots of other projects going on, and C, it's a multi-platform game that if they could walk away from Apple completely and still have some successes, but they also had the ability to still offer this to Mac users because there was an alternative app store that they could actually offer it through. And this is why Apple has to answer a whole lot of pointed questions about how they run the iOS store, because I mean, I appreciate Alex's point that it is a huge job. I also appreciate the point that there are people who have had problems with the App Store approval process but managed to navigate them. That doesn't change the fact that Apple should be ashamed of the fact that the App Store is broken is part of the App Store's brand at this point. This isn't a recent thing. This is historically, that this is part of the burden you're going to have to suffer if you're going to be dealing with Apple and trying to sell things through their app stores. And the fact that some people are not having these problems doesn't mean that the problems that some people are having don't exist or shouldn't be solved.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, but I appreciate that, but I'm saying that I have to keep raising this point. Apple isn't two hippies in a garage. They have $2 trillion they have solved problems that are at this scale before. If they feel as though it's important for them to solve it. If there's a bureaucracy that doesn't work, Apple would be ashamed of themselves if this were a simple defect in the iPhone that caused a similar percentage of users to have a 2-week problem getting their iPhones up and running. People would be fired. There would be like having press releases. They'd be left and right. I don't know why Apple doesn't want to at least create the illusion that they think that this is a problem. They agree that this is a problem, and they're trying to do something about it in an active way.
I think it'd be pretty presumptuous to think that they're not trying to make it better. They're not trying to improve.
They're trying and they're failing.
Well,
again, this is their brand.
I don't think that. I think that I admit that what I view, I look at everything as broken. Like everything around me is broken all the time. So I look at how the state is broken. Every program is broken. Everything I do is broken. Everything is broken. Like everything's broken. Nothing's working perfectly. There's things that are, falling apart all the time. I don't know a single thing that I think isn't broken. So I have to admit that I look at it like, well, you make progress. And as someone who works in a lot of things with a lot of people, nothing's perfect. And you sit there and you go, well, let's figure out how to keep on iterating. And I think that Apple is going to keep on iterating in those areas. But I think that if I needed to get something in, if it mattered to me, and it has mattered to me to get things into the App Store, it hasn't been that big of a lift. It's not like it's been traumatic to get it in. And I will say that as someone who's right now I'm designing apps that are going to go in the fall, and these may actually be a for sale product. I don't want it to be easier because I know that I'll get in, because I'll figure out what I want. And what
late-stage capitalism, ladies and gentlemen, late-stage capitalism. I'm sorry, I'm joking.
The reason for that is that I want the maximum confidence of the user that when they download it, what I prioritize as a developer is that I want the user to have the highest level of confidence, even if it means that it's harder for me to get into, so that they're more likely to go, oh, that looks interesting, I'll just buy it. Like I have a certain trust as a user. That trust is huge for small developers because I'm going to put something out that isn't going to be, usually I work with larger companies and they're just and so on and so forth. I'm going to put something out that's smaller and everything else. And I need them to trust me. And what Apple does, even if it's high friction and imperfect, they create a high friction system that means that there's a much more likely, I would never put it. I mean, the Google Play Store is not that way. Like I look at stuff on my Android phone, I look at it and I go, well, I don't know what's going to happen there. And so I don't know what the interface is going to be like. I don't know if it's going to be stable. I don't know if it's going to be safe. I don't know all kinds of things about it in any other store. On the App Store, I look at it and I go, well, I think I can. I mean, I'll give it a shot. I download things all the time that I just want to see if it works. If the users lose that trust, the developers that hurt the most are the smallest developers because they don't get that automatic trust that it went through this filter, regardless of how imperfect that filter is. And sometimes it lets things in it shouldn't. Sometimes it'll stop things. It's an imperfect filter, but the trust level is so much higher in the iOS store than anywhere else. I don't think we can argue with the trust level being higher in that store than anywhere else. Because that filter is hard. And so as a small developer working on something for this fall, I want that trust level to be the highest. I know that I'm not going to have any problem. I know that it might take me 3 or 4 submissions to get it in, and then it'll be there. And when people see it and they think that it might be the thing that will solve their problem, they'll be likely to just go, okay, I'll buy it. And so that's the difference for the smallest developers. That trust is a huge issue. And for the fact that some people have a little harder time, I would rather them pay for that so that the small developers can have that level of trust that they get by being in the store.
Okay, I'll try to make this brief, but number one, I am never going to make an excuse for Apple's failures in the App Store. I don't think it's the be all end all of how Apple runs its business. It doesn't mean that this is a total disaster and we need a regime change. But I don't think that Apple has earned any sort of excuses made on how it runs the App Store. Again, we're talking about generations in which they know that's not just, oh well, gosh, they have a high standard of quality and it's hard for us to maintain that. No, it's these arbitrary things that, like, guess what? Well, we've decided there's a simple form to fill out, but we're going to put it on the top of a 20-foot ladder that's coated in bear grease. Why? Well, because we're just making it harder for you. And that's what it often feels like. And secondly, the App Store has all of the same problems of the Google Play App Store, just in a smaller scale. That is a big advantage, but that doesn't mean that it's just the problems that it has are a smaller, more contained dumpster fire than the dumpster fire that's going on in the Google Play Store. So I don't think that Apple can justify that, oh well, look at the benefits that we're delivering by making this process so difficult. Again, people aren't having a problem because they used a different type of controller. They used placeholder text where they should have put final text. That's simple stuff. That's crossing the T's and dotting the I's. They're having problems with, you approved this 5 years in a row. Last year we quit our jobs because we're making enough money off of this app to sustain us, and now you're telling us that you're going to be turning off all of our revenue because of an arbitrary reason that's going to be really, really hard, if not impossible, for us to arbitrate. I'm just saying that this is the reason why Apple's being called in front of world governments to say, explain how you run the App Store, explain why we should allow you to continue to have the level of autonomy that you have. And I don't think Apple has a lot of good answers to that.
They're not getting called in front of the government because of this. They're getting called in front of the government because rich companies want to give 15% instead of 30%. Let's be clear that no one would even hear this conversation. Like the reason that they're having it is because European companies want to have European laws and American companies want to have American laws to cut down on how much they pay, because they want to make, instead of 100 million, they want to make 150 million. But that's the only reason. The lobbies would not. The lobbies, I mean, you're not being you're not being realistic there. Like the lobbies for these little things would never ever turn the corner in the United States or Europe. This is not what's taking it there. It's taking it there because rich companies want more money. That's the only reason that it has enough force to get through that system.
I believe that lobbying is an influence, but no, the EU is not. The EU is not having all these, but every single company, because the International Lobbying Committee on every single court is doing this. There is a movement basically saying, not necessarily saying that Apple, you need to be punished, or Google, you need to be punished. It's that we have basically been under-regulating you people since the 1990s, and under-regulating you has worked out really great for the world and for individuals, no doubt. But now's the time to ask. Now that you are secure, now that all these technologies have been completely matured, is it time to simply say that no, you can't run these things exactly the way you want? That maybe there are existing laws that we have not been prosecuting you on, or at least examining you on. Again, lobbying is always going to be the filthy fingerprints that are on every single part of government and law enforcement. However, to say that Apple's only being asked about this stuff because another rival game store wants to avoid paying money, or just because Spotify is upset that they're having competition inside the Apple Music Store. No, it finds people inside a government who believe that, why is Apple allowed to have an exclusive on this? Why is Apple allowed to do things with its own music app and its own music service that it doesn't allow other music services to do? I'm not going to reject that lobbying is an influence. I will reject the idea that that's the only reason why this is happening.
One of the things that is possibly going to happen, there's a lot of pressure to get Apple to allow non-WebKit browsers on iOS. And according to 9 to 5 Google's ready. They quietly unveiled a new effort to port the Blink browser engine, Chromium's browser engine, to iPhone. They can't do it yet, but I think they're preparing for a day when maybe, perhaps, you can have third-party browsers. I'm sure everybody listens to this show knows that when you're using anybody's browser on iPhone, you're really using WebKit under the hood. It's really Safari with a different UI. Google and others would like it to be Chrome, the Blink engine. So here's screenshots of the minimal Blink-based browser running on iPhone 12. Seems to work okay. We shall see. 9to5 Google actually built the prototype browser from the source code on because it is an open source project, and we're able to show their site running on iOS in the Xcode simulator, not on an actual iPhone. So progress proceeds. Do you have a problem, Alex, with that, or would you prefer that all the browsers are Safari?
Sure, you can do it. I mean, all 3% of the people that want to download it, I'm sure will download it.
Well, there's some reasons you might want to download a non-WebKit browser. Quite a few.
I don't have any problem with that. I think it's fine. I think it's. I don't think there's anything wrong with having them download and put another browser.
Apple's not going to do it, of course, unless forced. Unless they decided strategically that maybe like a plea bargain. Okay, well, if we give you this, will you let up?
Or that it'll take the heat off, right? Like even if nobody's saying we may make you do this, if they're like, look at how open we are, just like when they did default apps, right? It would be a little bit like that. And there are, Leo, I'm glad you mentioned there are lots of reasons for it. Alex is right that the home field advantage is strong, right? Like just getting anybody to download anything over what's already on the phone is
it's the only explanation for why Internet Explorer was used for so many years.
Yeah.
It was the default on Windows.
Exactly. It's the default. Right? And people don't, and we care, but other people don't care. But I was thinking about how, a few years ago, there were a whole bunch of these, and they're still out there, things like Zencaster and Cast that are like, for our business, you can do podcasting in a browser and it records locally and then sends the file back. And it's like a one-stop shop. There's only one catch. It doesn't work on Safari because for whatever reason, there were certain web standards that Apple just decided not to implement in WebKit. And so they still don't work. And these aren't esoteric. They're standards and they're not there. And so that means iOS devices are just out of luck. But you look at this report and I immediately think, like that whole class of things that doesn't work on iOS will probably work if I can run Chrome on iOS, because it will have all the proper like WebRTC extensions and file support that I need. And that it's a little thing, it's a niche thing, but for if somebody's building their web app on what they think are standards, but it doesn't work in Safari, that means they're locked out of iOS right now. And although most people won't do it, I have gotten people to download Chrome literally just to use one of those apps.
Right.
So it's nice as an option. But you're right. Home field advantage is strong unless a regulator forces Apple to not include Safari on. And I have a hard time imagining that somebody's going to order that, your smartphone must be sold empty, right? It seems unlikely that that's going to happen. So I think that it'll always be dominant.
If there's people who want privacy and so they use DuckDuckGo's browser, I guess you could do that on top of WebKit, but you're very limited to what Apple will allow and what they won't allow. I guess that's the way it is on iPhone entirely.
Yeah. I'm just glad the idea that Safari will have competition on that platform, because I do think that it will. I don't think that Safari is in need of a major revolution, but I think that it would benefit by saying that, if they see that they're losing ground to Chrome, it will say, well, we better support more standards. We'd maybe loosen our grip on certain things. The only thing I'm worried about is that we've seen about how certain scummy social media apps, oftentimes they make you, they'll put if you tap a link within a social media post, you think that you're actually opening it in the regular Safari browser or the Chrome browser. You're actually opening it inside a web view inside that app, where the app can have more closer observation over what you're doing.
That's
and
almost all the
time.
It's like, when you buy something on Instagram, you're still in Instagram.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm worried that they will replace that. Oh, great. We now have the Instagram browser. We have our own browser engine specifically for iOS, specifically to keep an eye on what you're doing when you're inside the Instagram app. So they're both sides to this.
I have mixed feelings. On the one hand, I'm glad Safari exists. Otherwise, Chrome would have something like 99% of all browser usage, or Chrome-based browsers like Microsoft's Edge. And I don't think a browser monoculture is a good thing. On the other hand, I'm sure, Alex, as a developer, It would be nice if you could develop for one browser on the web.
It's always nice to develop for one thing.
Yeah, but I think it's risky too to have a monoculture. You know, I mean, it's nice that bananas are very consistent, but at the same time, you get a disease, all those bananas are gone. And I think that security is the issue with monoculture and browsers.
Well, I think security will be the issue with I mean, I think if there's any security issues with any third-party browser, Apple's going to bury them. Like they're going to use that. I mean, the thing is this is an easy place for them to hand a little freedom out and let people screw it up and then pound it.
Well,
to
be fair,
so the
Safari,
thing is that,
look, like, the 0 days that Apple just patched were in WebKit.
Sure.
And they were 0 days, they were in the wild. So Apple has no standing if they say, well, look at all the flaws in Chromium.
Well, whether they have the standing or not, they're going to use it. Like, the thing is that, they're so it doesn't matter whether they have the standing or not. They're just going to, it'll just be a good point for them. And if someone, especially power, I think what you're going to find is that people are going to build third-party browsers. They're not going to be as efficient as Safari, and Apple's going to point that out in some keynote. That's that'll be what the next.
Yeah, that's certainly the case with Chrome on Mac, right? Google is.
Holy smokes!
Yeah, it's terrible.
It takes up so much. It's just a huge CPU draw, and there's a lot of things like that. I mean, that's what happened with Flash, is that Apple didn't support Flash because they wanted battery life,
right?
So I think that's going to be Apple's thing. Like, I don't put any Facebook. I don't put any Meta apps on my phone, but not because I have a security issue. I don't put them on, I'm on Facebook on my computer. I don't put them on my phone because I like having my battery last all day.
Right.
And if I put anything made by Meta on, including WhatsApp, it's just going to chew my battery into the ground, and I just don't need that.
Yeah, it's notorious for that. But it's a double-edged sword for Apple too. They can't push too hard. They'd love to have it be a complete walled garden, but they can't push too hard either. So they're gonna do strategic concessions.
They're pretty good at trying to draw a line. I mean, they'll fight really hard in some areas and allow other things to slide slowly,
right?
Some direction. It's kind of an ebb and flow kind of thing.
Yeah, I just hope that the idea of controlling the whole widget continues to be something they do because they consider every single possibility and decide that this is the way to provide the best value for users. I hope that as Apple grows older and as it starts to, at the point where it loses the CEO that had such a close relationship to one of the founders of the company, I hope that doesn't simply become dogma that, well, if this came from outside of Apple, we're not going to trust it, we're not going to use it, even though there could be an advantage to other people. But we'll see how that turns out.
Yesterday, the EU in this regard had what they called a stakeholder workshop talking about the Digital Markets Act. That's the thing that really is holding Apple's feet to the fire. Of course, Spotify was one of the panelists. 9 to 5 Mac reporting. Spotify's director of global competition policy talked about the topic of giving choice to app developers, how to implement the rules related to in-app payment systems. These are the 3 issues. Steering and consumption-only apps. He wants 2 key changes. Spotify wants 2 key changes. And he believes that the law, the DMA, forces it. 1, allow an alternative option for in-app purchases on iOS. 2, allow developers and companies to have direct communications with the consumers. That is a real burr in the saddle for Spotify and a lot of companies, that Apple protects the privacy of the user and does not let the app developer have access to the user's identity. And Spotify says this is the clause of the DMA that gives them legal clout. The gatekeeper shall not require end users to use or business users to use, to offer, or to interoperate with an identification service, a web browser engine, or a payment service, or technical services that support the provision of payment services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, of that gatekeeper in the context of services provided by the business users using that gatekeeper's core platform services. I'm sure in the original Dutch it makes much more sense, but apparently that's the clause, and I can see why there might be.
When this libretto is set to music, it's going to be the highlights of the opera season. I promise you.
Spotify doesn't like the 30% Apple tax, and when they use the word suppression, I'm guessing that they're talking about the app approval process. I'm guessing. I don't know what that.
Yeah, the only one of these three things where I really do say that Apple should definitely give is the idea of allowing software developers to have a closer relationship with the users. I do understand the privacy aspect of this, but nonetheless, I think it's way too hard to. It seems as though Apple is saying you don't get to exploit our users, only we get to exploit our users. And sometimes in a company like Bare Bones Software, our friends Rich Siegel and the rest there. It's like you kind of want to have a close relationship with Bare Bones. You kind of want to have a close relationship with Panic because they're great companies, and they are probably going to do you extremely right. And the idea of making it harder for you to develop that relationship with your customers, also harder for you to figure out who are our customers, what are they responding to, what part of the segment, what segment of the marketplace are we ignoring here, and that we should probably be trying to appeal to. I think those are really, really important things, and I think that Apple, again, at least needs to explain why this is such an important thing that there's such a strict ban on it.
Well, 9 to 5 Mac says Apple had a representative at the stakeholder workshop who spoke on the topic. And again, I think in the original Flemish, this might make more sense, of fostering contestability, web-based apps, sideloading, and alternative app stores compliance models. According to 9 to 5, what Apple's really saying is it believes the App Store model is the best approach for security and privacy, but they acknowledged that they will have a legal obligation to comply with the Digital Markets Act. And Spotify said, well, Apple doesn't really have a monopoly on security and privacy, and it's better for everyone to encourage more competition.
I think that as a user, I don't want to give up my privacy. Like as a user, I don't want to. If there's some reason that you give me in the app to go to your website and download, and to get more information or something and build that relationship, I'm 100% behind it. But if I download your app, I don't want you to have my information, because when I delete that app because I decided I didn't like it anymore, you still have all my information. And if you look at how GUI, one thing Apple has gotten good at with ATT is you're like, really, you're selling my data? Like, this isn't, can we use your data for our own use? This is, can we sell this data to other people? That's when every time you see that little window come up, remember they're asking, can I use you as a product? And so that's how often they are using us as a product. And so that's why we don't, as users, I don't want to give them that information. I don't want to, I don't want them sharing it. I don't want to, I'm not, by buying their app, I'm not giving them I'm not okaying it. Now, if Apple says, I think the step Apple will probably take, which I think is probably fine, is can or do you want to share your contact information with this app developer? And that can be something that comes up, and 70% will probably do the same thing that they do with ATT, which is no. And so, but giving I think giving the user choice to have that happen, I think is probably okay. Forcing Apple to do it to every person that buys it, not okay. And I think that I think that you're going to find more and more people are getting, as they realize how much they're being just resold, like a market pig, they're going to realize that people are going to start turning more and more against it. For a while, we were in this turn where everyone thought, well, you're just going to give up all your privacy. That's not the direction that most of the world's going now. Most of the world's going to, I don't want to share anything, and Apple's making that possible. We wouldn't even have the ability to say, I don't want to share anything if iOS didn't exist. And so I think that because everyone else wants our data. And so I think that's going to be that's a harder one. I think the biggest problem for Spotify is that they're falling behind. Apple Music, I use both Apple Music and Spotify almost equally, just because I have some playlists on Spotify that I haven't been able to get out of Spotify. And I'll just tell you that I find that that Apple has passed them, as far as ease of use across all my devices and my system in the ecosystem. I think Spotify has bigger problems than just being able to get in and out. It's just not as good an app anymore.
I still use Spotify, but I do see your point. I wonder why Spotify is still not making the same commitments to high resolution audio, not making the same commitments to. I mean, they've been announcing it.
Spend it all on.
They've been teasing it. Yeah, and that's bad too. I do like Spotify because I have the opposite sort of experience, but that just shows you how experiences are different across users. I do find that Spotify, it's very, very. I love the fact that I'm listening to Spotify on one device, and I have the Spotify app on my phone, and it realized, oh, you're playing it through your TV and your home speakers right now. Would you like me to take over and just act as a controller for you, or would you like to override that without being quite so modal about it? But yeah, it's a thing.
One thing that still hurts my heart is the acquisition of Primephonic, which was the classical music app that I subscribed to and loved, and Apple has yet to replace it with something. In every case, whether it's Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Apple Music, they have classical, but it's it's all mixed in. It's just not as good an experience as Primephonic was, and I'm sad that they've never. I mean, they killed it, and they have yet to replace it. They say they're gonna. Drives me nuts. Every single time I want to hear classical music, I'm compelled to go through an unpleasant process to get to it.
My only real complaint about Apple Music is that it's so melded into the streaming service that if you want to listen to music files locally, which is not the way that most people listen to, but it's not as though it's like this.
If you ever go on an airplane,
niche.
You need it. You have to have it.
Yeah. And the way that they make it really, really confusing about here are your files, here are the stuff that you actually own, here's the stuff that you've got on your home web server, here's the stuff that you have like in a directory on your drive. No, I don't know, Apple. I don't need you to reorganize this. No, I don't want you to replace these files with Apple Music files. I don't want to be in a position where I've got my device out someplace else and I suddenly realize that I can't listen to this stuff on the plane because I forgot to sync or because I forgot to tell Apple that this is something that I want to take with me. I really wish that there were something that was more like iTunes, even if it were a separate app. This is to create this really wonderful app just for listening to local music files.
I know Vox is not the be all and end all, but that's why I pay a lot of money for a Vox subscription because I have all my stuff stored on Vox, and that's what it is basically. It doesn't have a streaming component. You just you download stuff for streaming.
I think a few weeks ago I recommended another free app that was I loved it. I love it and I still use it because it really is like iTunes pre Apple Music service.
I remember that. Yeah. What was it?
Third party opportunity. I have to tab into it to find it.
Somebody will.
I'll find it though.
Somebody remember.
Yes.
And Apple, Scooter X just posted another Mac rumors saying 16.4 beta 2 has classical music. Yeah. I've been hearing it for a long time. I'm not getting my hopes up on that one. Now, I think it's just because Johnny. I think it's just because the people inside Apple like to listen to Primephonic. They won't let us use it either. Jerks. It just hurts my heart. I mean, it's not the end of the world. I can find classical music. Blah blah blah.
They'll get to it. Yeah.
Sad, and it's just one more way that the pop world has dumped on the great music of our life. Sonos,
you're driving me my Peter Beskala. Come on.
Sonos speaker. I know. And the only reason I bring it up is because I know you and I agree on this one thing.
He's killing it in longer run, for God's sakes.
Sonos speakers are going to support Apple Music spatial audio starting March 28th. Apple isn't the only source of spatial music. I know Spotify and Amazon both say they have it. And I think it's Dolby Atmos in all cases, right? Unfortunately, I don't have any of the speakers that'll support this. Not the older Sonos speakers. You'll need an Era 300, the Arc, or a second generation Beam soundbar. But if you have and I listen to Sonos music on my moves, but they're not supported apparently. So no spatial for you. I have to say, and Jason, I know you did a review of the new
HomePod,
newly released HomePods, and your biggest complaint was that they dropped out, and I have experienced some of that. But I put HomePods, I replaced the minis with full-size HomePods in our bedroom, one on Lisa's side, one on mine, and the spatial audio on it is actually really good. As I wander around, I don't know how they're doing this, but as I wander around, I even go around the corner into the bathroom, it still feels full stereo and spatial. It really sounds great. So I don't know what trick they're pulling there, and the sound quality I think is just as good as the original HomePods. So
they're doing a lot of processing on the old one and the new one, right? The spatial audio is ultimately it's got multiple stems of audio, and then on the device or devices they're computing their place and maybe your place, and then they're creating a kind of a dynamic mix where they're trying to bounce things around and get it to feel like you're not getting sort of one sound or two sounds left and right. And sometimes it is magic and sometimes it's not. Although I have to laugh. Sometimes with things like a 2-point source like headphones, you end up with this thing which is it's just headphones. It can't match up with 7 speakers,
right?
And the answer is frequently like, yeah, but you only have 2 ear holes, right? So there's a lot. Like
it's really amazing what they could do.
You could, right? Like in the end, it is. When you put up 7 speakers or 8 speakers, it really is just sound bouncing off walls going in your 2 ear holes. So if they can emulate that,
right.
And sometimes they can do that, and sometimes it works well and sometimes it doesn't. But I appreciate what they're trying to do. Sometimes, like in my home theater, it sounds great. In my ears on AirPods, I don't know. I could take it or leave it. Sometimes I prefer the regular stereo mix at that point, but I think it's a fun idea, and that in certain circumstances it can really sound more isolated and kind of full than if you only got 2 sources, right? Because that's in the end that's what it is they just got more sources and are doing more dynamic output by the little computer that lives inside those speakers.
There's only, as you kind of try to fake it around for some without having discrete speakers, there's only so much resolution you can have. So that's the big problem, is you can't have the resolution of where those things are. I do a fair bit where I have doing stuff in 5.1 and 7.1.2 and 5.1.4, 7.1.2, 5.1, and there's just a lot of more places to put it. There's a lot of calculations that we do, specifically when we get into height, that you're doing this kind of comb filter that tells your brain that it's above you. And in those areas, as we start to calculate that, it becomes you're mixing. It's just very hard to separate everything out. When you have those explicit speakers, you get a lot more resolution, and so that's the big advantage. But I think that, the spatial audio works pretty well. I do think that it makes a big difference. What we find is that if you fill up, I have to compose for some of this stuff at times, and when I don't compose, I mix, or build the system to mix it. And when you start filling all that space out, you are hearing it. Things that are just coming down the center channel will sound more centered, because your brain is being tickled into those, by those other things, and it builds a bigger space in your head. So I think the spatial audio is pretty interesting. I have to admit that when Sonos bricked my hardware, I stopped buying them. I'll never buy them again. like I'll never, like Sonos doesn't even show up on my radar. Like it doesn't, the product doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, that hurt. We have a lot of Sonos speakers 14 all over of them. The studio. Yeah.
I have
How many do we have
bricks.
in here, John? Do you know? You ever count them? 6 5s and a 3. Whatever that means. That sounds like 33 to me, but anyway.
Yeah.
And then there's these new speakers. The Era speakers are the ones that specifically are supporting spatial, but they're $450. I think the HomePods sound great at $150 less than that. So I'm pretty happy with a big HomePods. I did note, Jason, that I get the dropout you're talking about where they lose pairing and then one turns on and the other one turns off, and it goes. That's extremely annoying. It happened to me most when I was airplaying from a Mac. When I'm airplaying from my phone, it doesn't seem to happen that often.
It does happen, but it's variable. I tried it with all the devices, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And the stereo pair adds difficulty to the whole thing.
It's so bad when it happens that it really stands out. But when it works, and mostly when I'm just saying, I'm mostly just saying, hey, Shlomo, play me some, fine music, and I listen to that, and I'm walking around getting ready for work or whatever. It sounds great. I have to say, I'm really pleased I put those in the bedroom. So they're good, and we still have Sonos in a lot of other. We have Sonos in the kitchen and a lot of other places, and those are great speakers. I was wrong. Spotify, I thought they did. They don't offer 3D spatial sound, but Amazon does. My problem with Amazon Unlimited is it's half podcast ads now. I'm going to there because I want to listen to music. I know where to find podcasts. You don't need to flog them. And I speak as a podcaster. So I don't know what Amazon's just like all in on podcasts. Spotify used to be. I wonder now that they're losing money on it, I'm not sure that they have the same joy and thrill in podcasting that we here on the other side do. All right, let's take a little break. When we come back, I will do all the rumors. There are so many rumors, and some of them very, very, very exciting. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Andy Ihnatko, WGBH Boston, from officehours.global, Alex Lindsay, and back from his walkabout in New Zealand, Mr. Jason Snell, 6colors.com. ACI.com. You might have noticed when you see the full studio, the beautiful signage for those great folks at ACI Learning. I want to tell you about ACI Learning. Not only are they studio sponsors, but you know them because ACI Learning merged with IT Pro. Actually, it's been more than a year now. And so all of you, and many of you I know have become IT Pro users. You should know that IT Pro has paired with ACI Learning and now can do so much more. Not just IT Pro, but Audit Pro. They've got practice labs. They even now have hubs, places where you can go in person for in-person instruction. And you can mix and match, and I love that. The most tech-savvy people in the world serve in the military, right? That's a great way to get your first tech chops. But then, you're mustering out. You got to decide how to transition to civilian life. ACI Learning wants you to know they proudly support veterans who are looking for a civilian career in IT or cybersecurity. Those vets are really ready. They're really good workers. They're smart, and they often have a lot of experience from the military, and now you can get that job. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported IT will add over 667,000 new jobs between now and 2030. Veterans are so perfectly qualified for these vacancies because in many cases you've already used the most advanced technology in the world. And of course, security is job number one with IT in the military. Many service members already have the training to protect systems from attacks. IT is a natural transition for you. If you like that, you really ought to consider ACI Learning. IT is a huge field, of course. Many opportunities that are very popular, especially for veterans, including cybersecurity. Did you know the average salary for a cybersecurity specialist is $116,000 a year? ACI Learning's information security analyst and cybersecurity specialist programs can help vets start their career. Network administration, also a great place to start. You'll always have a job if you know how the network runs. The average salary for an entry-level network administrator is $75K. ACI Learning's Network Support Specialist program provides the training needed to pursue or advance a career in networking. So you're ready to take the CCNA cert or the CompTIA security or network certification exams. Those certs are a great way to get that job. IT project management, also important. The average salary of an IT project manager, $105,000 a year, projected to grow 11% in the next 10 years. ACI Learning's Senior Technology Project Manager program certifies students in the skills they need to become a project manager. The world awaits you, and we need you. We desperately, desperately need you. If you want to know more, IT training with funding specially for veterans, ACIlearning.com/veteran-IT-training. Do it in person, on demand, or remote. There are several programs available for vets who want to fund their education. Really great way to make that transition to civilian life. Choose a career to support your goals. Let ACI Learning help you get started. ACI Learning and Twit TV want to thank our veterans and active duty service members for their service. We really appreciate it. And this is a way we can kind of give back a little bit. The military uses the most advanced technology in the world, making veterans uniquely qualified for IT jobs. Before 2030, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported IT will add over 667,000 positions. Learn more about IT training for vets at go.acilearning.com/twit, and you'll save 30% when you use the offer code TWIT30. That's on a standard or premium individual IT Pro membership. Go.acilearning.com/twit. We really appreciate the support from ACI Learning. You support us when you go to that address. So whether you go to acilearning.com/veteran-IT-training or the main site, go.acilearning.com/twit, make sure you do that so that they know you saw it here. And use that code TWIT30 because you get a reward 30% off. Thank you, ACI. All right. I'm excited about some of these rumors. In fact, I've had to rethink my my Mac buying strategy based on one of these. Is this a surprise, Jason, that maybe the new 15-inch MacBook Air will have an M3 in it? I didn't think that was going to happen.
I am not a believer, but it would be a big surprise for them to turn over from the M2 to the M3 in less than a year. Remember, that was a WWDC announcement last year of the M2. And so if the M3 is coming sooner rather than later, I'd be a little surprised. I think the real question is sequencing. Is this 15-inch MacBook or MacBook Air coming out soon? And then there will be a M3 version of the MacBook 13-inch MacBook Air that we know and love.
According to the rumor.
Summer.
According to the rumor. But
right.
yeah, that's, I guess there will be for sure, but will it be this year? Will it be this summer? Will it be this spring?
Right.
Will
but
it be
I guess my question is the sequence is, would you, if you're Apple, come out with this big 15-inch laptop that you want that's not a Pro, with an M2, and then 3 or 4 months later go to M3?
Yeah.
Or would you hold off and release an M3 Air and the 15-inch together? And I think, from the outside, that's what it looks like. But from the inside, it may entirely be that the 15-inch was always intended to be the trail end of the M2 generation, and that the M3 generation would start with the Air. And, from the outside here, we look in and we go, well, wait, why don't you ship those things together? And so now we've got two rumors, one of which says they're going to ship together as M3 laptops, and the other says, no, this 15-inch is much further along and it's going to come first, and it'll be an M2, which I think is reasonable. But the only thing is, if you're Apple, you might say, well, are we not going to sell as many of these because we're going to eclipse it with the M3 in a few months? And I that's a good question, because I think ideally they would ship them together, but it may be that the truth is that they needed the extra time after they shipped the 13-inch to ship the 15-inch, and do they want to wait until the summer? I don't know, but I mean, it's exciting that the idea that the M3 could be coming at the 3-nanometer process, maybe even ahead of where the iPhone chips have been, which would be a first for the Mac version of Apple Silicon.
Yeah, and that would be an interesting statement, because right now it's a laggard, right? You put it first in the iPhone, and then you put it in the Mac late, like a lot later, maybe a year later. And that's even though we know they're different, they're really different chips. It would be kind of nice for the Mac to get the pride of place for once.
Yeah, it would be great. And for people who might say, well, what about the iPhone? The iPhone's the most important. The fact is the iPhone uses an A chip, right? And other than nerds who are saying, well, what kind of core is in there, right? The rest of us, if Apple says, no, for this time around, we're actually going to do the new cores in a Mac first, and then the new cores will come to the iPhone later, I don't think it really matters in the end. But it would be fun to see, right, that rather than debuting your cores in your phone and then having it come to your computers later, maybe this time around, whether it's CPU cores or GPU cores or both, and this new 3-nanometer process that they're not on for the iPhone, to have it debut in the M3, that would be pretty sweet. And it feels right to me. It feels like the M2 was Mark Gurman at Bloomberg called it a stopgap, but it feels kind of like M1 and M2 were all about just like getting on Apple Silicon. And then M3 is obviously the next wave of like, well, now we're taking the process size down and we're going to do some next generation stuff. And that's really exciting. That might be this summer. That's really exciting.
We know that TSMC is, well, we've heard that TSMC is producing these 3-nanometer chips, the M3s now, 45,000 wafers a month. It's not in the volume that you'd need, frankly, for an iPhone, but it might be in the volume you need for a Mac. So there's somewhat of a war. Ming-Chi Kuo says, no. The 15-inch MacBook, or is it MacBook Air? We don't know what it's going to be called. Will have an M2 or M2 Pro in it. Gurman says, I'm hearing it's going to be an M3. Which would really screw up my buying plans. There's also, of course, the issue of a 24-inch iMac. He says that's coming. He says
with an M3.
This is a Gurman with M3. He says Apple is scheduled to launch about 3 new Macs between late spring and summer. Summer being WWDC, I think. Yes.
Summer would. I think that's like late. I mean, WWDC is almost late spring. Actually,
right. It's early June. So
yeah.
Okay. So he says, I am told Apple is launching 3 new Macs between late spring and summer. Those 3 models are likely to be the first 15-inch MacBook Air, J515, the first Mac Pro, the Mac Pro, whatever happened to that, with homegrown Apple chips, the J180, and an update to the 13-inch MacBook Air, the J513. And he says the remaining question is, which processors will these run? We already know the Mac Pro will include the M2 Ultra. Oh, do we know that? Okay. Which will provide up to 24 CPU cores, 76 graphic cores, top out with 192 gigabytes of RAM. We also know that Apple's developed the next iMac on the same timeline as the M3 chip. So Mark says, I'd expect it. That means, by the way, this is not what he's heard. This is what he's predicting. So I'd expect it to be one of the company's first M3. It's so important. And Renee Ritchie told us how to read Mark's.
That's right.
Mark's rumors. So this is his thinking, not his sources. That would be
when he was at 9 to 5, it was all sources, but Bloomberg is like, but the narrative, you must have the narrative. And so now he has to do that kind of like, well, I expect it to
be one of the company's first M3 based machines. This is the iMac. But the chip destined for the new MacBook Air models is slightly less clear. Now remember that Kuo said M2. Gurman says if those machines launch in a few months with the M2 chip, they'll quickly become outdated. That's what you were saying, Jason.
Right.
A 15-inch MacBook Air with an M2 may still excite consumers, but a new M2 13-inch MacBook Air is unlikely to be compelling. We already have an M2 13-inch MacBook Air.
That's the part that I thought was especially perplexing is Mark Gurman's report says there's going to be a new MacBook Air model, and he doesn't know whether it'll be an M2 or an M3.
Well, it has to be an M3, right?
Mark's a smart guy, but of course it's an M3. Like, what? Unless no, it's the same, but they changed the colors or something. Like that's a dumb product release. So
why bother?
So the MacBook Air has got to be an M3, right? So the question really is, do you release an M2 15-inch laptop knowing it's going to be surpassed by an M3 and just figuring, look, people are just going to want the 15-inch laptop, they're not going to care? Or do you hold on to that product and release it at the same time? I think the reason you would release it early is because you've been making them for a while now and they're on another production track and you need to get them out the door and they just didn't line up. And as we've seen with the iPad especially, Apple is actually not afraid to release products in a sequence that don't make sense,
right?
Because they've done it when they have to with other products that are in like the iPad that's got the weird pencil but it's got the good placement of the camera and they're all over the place with that. And sometimes that has to do with whatever is happening on the inside in terms of manufacturing. So it may be that their remaining M2 chips are going to go in this 15-inch laptop, and then separately they've got this new Air. And they'll say to themselves, yeah, in the fall or the winter we'll put the M3 in that 15-inch laptop too, but we're not worried about it for now.
Are they trying to get on a yearly cadence? Scenario. Is it in their interest? I understand now in the early days you're kind of stagger stepping, but eventually you'd want to do a yearly cadence of all this stuff. Yeah?
Gurman says it weirdly. He says they have said they want to go on a yearly cadence, and I know they've never said that for the M series chip. But given that the A series is on a yearly cadence, I think it would be great because the alternatives are either these 18 months cadences where you have to skip certain generations. 2 years is too far. So yeah, I think in the end what they'd like and what we're starting to see is maybe they want the chips every year. But some of the models skip years, right? So the iMac skipped a year, maybe the Mac Studio skips a year, the Mac Pro will certainly skip a year. And so maybe you'll end up in a situation where like MacBook Air and MacBook Pro get updated every year. And then at Mac Mini and iMac and a few other models, it's an every other year kind of thing. And that would not be unreasonable at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess some of this is dependent, just as they used to be dependent on Intel, they're now dependent on TSMC and what TSMC can do. But the story was they had bought up all the 3 nanometer chips.
Yeah.
So they got them, however many that is. So he says last year, Apple introduced the first M2 chip at WWDC in June. If Apple were to stick, again, this is his speculation, to stick to last year's schedule, an M3 chip alongside a new MacBook Air at WWDC 23 would make sense. The company could then follow up with the M3 iMac later in the year and the M3 Pro and M3 Max-based MacBook Pros in 2024. He says the M3 will also land next year in a revamped, this is the most exciting paragraph, frankly, in a revamped iPad Pro with OLED screens scheduled for the first half of 2024. And looking further into the future, even more exciting Mac upgrades as early as 2025. And this is the line I like, that likely includes the first MacBooks with OLED screens and touch support. That's an interesting roadmap. Again, this is Mark's speculation. You have to go back a few paragraphs to where he's been told things.
He's previously reported that about the Touch, that they were working on that.
Yeah,
so some of that
it.
isn't his.
Yeah,
it's good to get. We're getting out the 2025 rumors now. I mean,
why not?
We can. Yeah,
I saved him for the second half of the show. It's below the fold. We can talk about it now. I would,
and for the next 2 years.
Yeah, I know. I would love. I mean, I just bought the M2 MacBook Air, and I love it, as you did.
It's great.
It's great.
Amazing.
Yeah,
it's so good.
But boy, I also was. I would have if I could have, but I needed it. But I would have held off for an M3. I'm very excited. I feel like the M3 is the next big leap, not the M2. The M2, as you said, is a stopgap.
And when you get to the bottom of the list, it's always that. Do you need a Mac now? Yes. Okay, then get a Mac now. There's no
need here. There's no need here, Andy.
So long as you didn't find that one page on the Apple Store that still has an Intel CPU in it, there's nothing. Because it would bum me out if they came out with an M3 based Mac Mini like in October, because I'm almost certainly going to be buying one like in the spring. But it's like I so desperately need a Mac Mini right now, and it's going to be so much of a leap over what I want to do, and it's going to have a good 5-10 years worth of life on it.
Yeah.
But again, if they say, oh, Andy bought his Mac in April, time to introduce a new one in May.
Well, that was my life story for decades, right?
and I
it's
think
hard not to take that personally.
Yeah,
I think that what I really love about the Mac Minis, and I have so many of them, is that you buy them, they still do what you want them to do. You can use them. I literally have one here that is 12 years old.
Wow.
And what it does is this. See this my little Telestrator.
Yeah.
That's all it does. It sits there and 12 years later.
We have an old one in the conference room for our Zoom meetings. They're great.
They don't have to do all the other things. I didn't pay extra. I paid for a CPU and some connections, and some, I buy them all the time, and I buy them without a lot of regret, because I know that I'll just keep using them for what they're good at. And the M1s and and I now have an M2. I'm going to use them I'll use them for another decade.
Part of the excitement about getting a new Mac Mini is knowing that my 2012 Mac Mini that's going to be replacing won't be going into storage or won't be given away. The excitement is, what can I use this Mac Mini for if it's just something that's going to be on all the time and able to do just background processes? It's like, do I dare have a Mac Mini as my Plex server? Like, no, that's not enough. That's not enough for it to do. Let's have it. Yeah, it's exciting.
It's because we had kits that had 12 Mac Minis at a time, because they're just glue. They did all of our scopes. Audio scope. There's Mac Minis for the audio scopes, so Mac Minis for the video scopes, Mac Mini for all these other things, and so we just have them. We're awash with Mac Minis, and we have been for the last decade, and they're just again. That's why I'm always like, this is the easiest thing for me to buy, and then everything else I'm like, well, how long is that going to last, and what am I going to do with that?
So the 13-inch MacBook Air with the M2 came out in July. So it would be almost a year if they announced an M3-based version in June.
At WWDC, which is when they announced the Air. It would be exactly a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And then a 15, it would make sense to wait till then. Here's the problem. Ross Young, another supply chain guy who's usually very accurate, says the 15 is going to be in April.
So, yeah, and they're looking at the factories, right? So unless something weird happened, and there's no M3 wouldn't be ready for
It couldn't
April,
be an
right?
M3 if that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're building them now for an April release, he's turning into Jim Dalrymple. There's his tweet. Yep.
Yep.
He forgot to renew the trademark.
So I don't know. What do we think? What is our consensus? I'm going to assume that you don't have the same sources as Gurman. Russ Young isn't calling you on the phone.
No, I'm not. I'm not rooting around in those factories either. But my gut feeling is that 15 has been rumored for so long, so it's reading the rumors, right? I think that 15-inch laptop is real and an M2 and is going to happen.
Yeah.
And then what's causing the confusion is we're watching the end of the M2 cycle butt up against the beginning of the M3 cycle. And so this is a follow-on. Remember that Air got really delayed too. So I suspect that the Air's delay led to the 15-inch laptop delay and has slid it all the way back to almost when they're ready to turn it over to M3. But that's my guess. And I think the truth is, and somebody in the in our IRC chat said this point, and I think they're absolutely right. People who are buying Apple's consumer level laptops, the MacBook Air, whether it's the 13 or the 15, do not deeply care about specs at a level where they're going to necessarily shy away from an M2 15-inch laptop just because there's also an M3 13-inch laptop. Because what's going to motivate them to buy that 15-inch laptop is not M2 versus M3, it's the screen size, right? That's what's going to motivate them. So I think that in the end, they won't lose a lot of sales for that. So I think that's most likely. And then the 13-inch will just get the M3 this summer and motor along.
I mean, I think when you're buying it, I mean, with the Air, I think a lot of the consumers are just looking at what bag it fits in. Like does it, does it like, I mean, because I have a bag that doesn't, the reason I got the 14 inches, I have a bag that doesn't fit the 16 inch. Now I'm not happy with the 14 inch for me, but I bought it.
Never let your bags dictate your purchases.
If you're not a pro though, if you're not a pro, they all do what you want if you're not a pro. So and I think that's the motivation behind that 15-inch laptop, if it does exist, is it's just like some people just want a bigger screen. They don't want to pay $2,000 for a MacBook Pro, a 14-inch or even more for the 16-inch. They just want a bigger screen what, and probably it comes from people buying the MacBook Air and Apple going to them in a survey and saying like, what would you change? And the answer being, I'd like a bigger screen, right? And they're like, okay, that's an interesting idea. So I think it'll just be, I mean, I'm curious what Andy and Alex think, but that's, if I had to bet, that would be my bet, is that it's just going to be an M2 and they'll do the M3 later.
Yeah,
I think so.
I agree. I'm interested to hear what people have to say about how, I mean, Alex mentioned like the famous prison lunch tray MacBook, like the 17-inch, which is the number 17 is a number you're familiar with. You think you have an idea of how big this MacBook is until the first time you actually see one, and you're like, no, that's bigger than is that? I think is that 17 feet or 17 inches? And I'm always curious about like, is there a mobile external display solution that would do the trick for you for having extra screen real estate? Or do you just want, because 17 it's a hard thing. You really do need a special bag to carry this around, and it's not going to fit in
my backpack. I mean, I have a Rush 24 that I put 2 or 3 laptops into my Rush 24. I will admit,
you have a backpack that could serve you for like 2 months. Yeah. After the collapse of all civilization. So that's
the best part about I will say the one thing about the 14 inch is it fits in that little pad against your back with an iPad. Like you put them both in there, and that's where I stick them. But the 17 inch, the big thing is that you get to a location, you open it up, and you don't have to do anything else. I don't have to figure out how to plug things in or where to plug things in. I just open it up. It's on. It's going to have a big battery. It's going to last a long time. If I'm on a flight, I could do real work. So assuming that I'm not in economy, but
exactly.
When I had a 17 inch, I was mostly not in economy. So
that's usually the case, right? The bigger the laptop, the bigger the seat.
Well, you have a lot of apologies to make. You're in the center seat. A lot of apologies to make to that person at the left and the right.
No, the thing is that I was when I had a 17 inch. I will say what came with the 17 inch is a maniacal obsession with the exit row. So I always knew where I was always like waiting right to when I could get into the exit row, because back then you had to like go the day before and go online and like the moment I was able to do it, I would get on the exit row so I could get that extra, so I could open it up, because you couldn't open the 17 inch in economy, or you'd be afraid that someone was going to open it against you. But the bottom line is you could open it up, you could open up a couple windows, you could do what you needed to do. And it was powerful, and it did all the things it needed to do. And I can only imagine what an M2 or M3 would, with, the kind of memory, the battery probably lasts 20 or 30 hours on a 17 inch. And so it would be, it'd be great. The 16 inch will be fine. It's fine. But the 17 inch was a great computer for a lot of us that were doing work on the road, like really doing like graphic work on the road. The 17 inch was really special, but nothing's ever been.
I think the 16 with the new small bezels and stuff will come pretty close to scratching that itch. I would think
it might. Yeah. If I
is 24 gigs enough RAM? Do you want more? You want more, don't you?
Yeah, I would always want more, but I mean, I think 32 is a good number for a lot of those things, but 24 is not too bad. You can do on a laptop, most of what you're going to do on a laptop, it's enough.
I'll tell you, the only reason I want, I have 24 in my M2 MacBook Air, but the only reason I'd want more is because I'm running Windows, and there's if you have a VM running, that you would like to have a little extra RAM for that.
I mean, there's definitely things like I have, I have some processes that I do that will not run under 64 gigs. Like they literally won't. It just says there's not enough RAM. Like I can't do what you need me to do without more RAM. So those are photogrammetry and some other calculation stuff that is required, that it needs to load everything into RAM, or it starts swapping horribly. So those are things that where the more RAM makes a difference. But it's usually a lot of texture maps or a lot of parallel processes or a lot of other things that are pretty deep edge cases. I think most people are fine without them.
The thing that makes me drool, and I'm still going to root for it, is that come June, WWDC, Apple announces a 15-inch MacBook Air with an M3 chip in it and 32 gigs of RAM.
I still think the Pro is probably what I would expect at dub. That's the thing that I think is going to be the big. I think the Pro, potentially the goggles.
Actually, I would buy the Pro. It's not much thicker than the Air, and it has all those ports. So I guess I could. Oh, all right.
I mean, the
you
Pro
me into it.
I mean, the big Pro.
Oh, the Mac Pro.
I think the Mac Pro is the one that works.
Oh,
I don't think the MacBook Pro.
Well, that's for developers. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's when the Pro that we have now, I believe, was at a WWDC is when it was announced. Yeah.
So you think they'll do that to the exclusion of everything else, and then like a month later?
And I think that the goggles might be out. If we're gonna
headset,
you know what? They're gonna have a lot to talk about. You're right. You don't want to fill it up with too much stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and that'd be the only reason. I wouldn't be surprised if they did the Pro earlier, just to get it out of the way. Like 2 weeks before, do a little bit, or a month before, do an event, get the Pro out of the way. If they're gonna do the goggles, they're gonna want to talk about as little as possible. Because that's going to be everything for them. So if they're doing that, if it doesn't happen this year, then we get to wait another year for AR. Because it's the time possibly the time to announce it is March or April to whet everybody's appetite for WWDC. But otherwise, it's going to be WWDC is when you announce the goggles, you put it out as a developer, you tell people it's going to ship for developers only in September or October, and you kind of prep everybody with all the new classes of code.
That report's out there already, right? I mean, I think we're pretty much guaranteed that WWDC is going to be it, unless it slips further.
If it works,
and the Mac,
works.
And the Mac, I've heard, I've heard from people who have heard from other people who've said that it's basically ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, we have to remember there was an app, there was a WWDC where there were all the graphics were in the shape of an Apple TV, and
you never know. Never
no Apple TV. There was
don't count your chickens before they're hatched. But the Mac Pro would be perfect for WWDC, right? Because that's the audience for it. And also, I would argue that there is something to be said for releasing your M2 Ultra, but still M2 based Mac Pro a little in advance of you flipping the calendar over to M3.
That's a good point. Don't mention X-nay on the M3.
I'll be really interested to see if the Mac Pro lets you swap the processor out. That would be just.
It's enough of an SoC that you could do that. You're thinking,
yeah.
And it'll be part of the ongoing discussion of how does Apple define the word Pro these days. And one of the things that is still on the books is, does Pro mean is on the desktop? It means that you can expand it later on, or you can reconfigure it as your needs change. Or, if you're spending $10,000 for a workstation where just the case itself has an $800 bill of materials, should you be okay to be able to replace this old processor with a new one?
It is a good advantage of unified memory that is now on the die. So it could
put it in a card. I mean, some kind of card that.
Yeah, as long as the bus is fast enough for disk I/O, it doesn't have to be fast enough for RAM anymore, or GPU anymore. So it does make sense. You could have a daughter card that is the CPU and the RAM and the GPU. Those are all on a fast internal bus, and the drives don't have to be.
Well, it's not just drives. It's having PCIe. Like PCI cards
PCI 4, right? PCIe.
Yeah, so you'd have being able to add 4 to 6 cards, being able to have you don't not so much RAM, but external RAM. I mean, being able to swap out drives, have external cards, and have a lot of I/O in it is a very valuable, and the ability to switch that chip out or just switch the card out would be a huge value as far as a pro app or a pro piece of hardware.
No kidding. And totally doable because of unified memory and unified GPU. Totally doable. I think, right? Does PCI get complicated if
It works in my head.
It works in my head.
It works
That's
perfectly.
all.
It works so well. It's so well.
So amazing.
Show title.
So amazing. It works in my head. Apple has released a 600 megabyte firmware update for your studio display. It's basically an iPhone with a giant screen.
iOS update.
Yeah. This is beta firmware, but yes. So do you have a studio display? Who has a studio? Anybody?
I do.
And you're on the beta?
Yep. I am not on the beta, so
Okay.
I don't know what beta goodness I'm missing
this
from
is beta
my
2.
screen.
600 megabytes is the goodness.
You're missing 600 megabytes.
No release notes, no clues as to what's changed or improved with the release according to 9 to 5 Mac. Public build will be coming out later, and at that point, they will have to put out release notes.
Yeah, I'm still fascinated by why that display runs iOS. That I'm sure there are all kinds of efficiencies they can get. I'm sure that saves them some problems running firmware. But I think all of us are still thinking about, what are they building? How are they going to what's going to happen like in 2024? An update that says, congratulations, you now have an augmented reality display target, or congratulations, you now have also a completely working Apple TV, or you now have an independent iOS. You now have something that can sideload. Excuse me. You now have something that can independently run iOS apps as to offload some of the processing power off of your iPad if you're using that as a productivity thing. I'm still flabbergasted as to what this thing could do running iOS.
And finally, before we get to the picks of the week, some great talented pianist and composer from Toronto has turned the iPhone alarm into an entire concerto and posted it on Insta. Let's see how many takedowns I can get for playing this. We'll just give it a shot and see. Ooh, I like the little bass line there. It's jazzy. I could dance to that.
It's like the iPhone's end credits music.
A love theme from iPhone.
The love theme from the iPhone.
Tebow Bryson.
It's a little more, it's dramatic. I think it's adding some backstory to the iPhone, you know? Some drama. Like maybe some broken hearts, love gone wrong.
Exactly.
But it all
sideload an app.
ends in a redeeming third act when the iPhone says goodbye to the iPod.
Of course, you know the problem with this composition. If you're playing it in concert, how will you know that someone forgot to turn off their phone? How will you scope them properly?
That apparently happened.
Oh yeah. There's a famous YouTube video of someone.
Yeah. New York Philharmonic Orchestra in 2012, marimba. So there you go. This is Tony Ann. And I immediately opened Downy and extracted the audio from this. I'm trying to decide if I should make it my ringtone. It seems a little overambitious, perhaps, for a ringtone. 18 million views on his reel. It's been liked 1.3 million times. And now just add one more view. They're saying on iMore that it's the alarm. Is that the alarm? I don't hear that as an alarm. I thought it was a ringtone, but anyway.
Yeah.
It's now an alarm, I guess. On 6. Yeah, it's a ringtone, isn't it? Yeah. It should be played on a marimba, though. Let's face it. I didn't know this, but apparently, this is John Anthony DeSoto writing at imore.com. Apple's never revealed the creator and origins of marimba. Although, in a 2013 article by Forbes, Brian Rommel notes the huge similarities between marimba from the original iPhone and orchestra marimba digital instrument from GarageBand Jam Pack 4 Symphony Pack instruments, released in 2005. So Rommel makes a conclusion that GarageBand's software developer Gerhard Lengling could be the original creator of marimba. Wouldn't that be funny if the kind of the distinctive, world famous iPhone ringtone was created in GarageBand?
It would be even funnier if it were like a later movement of a classical piece that is well known to like classical heads, and so and kind of like how the Lone Ranger theme like was only got stolen away from the original composer when it became the Lone Ranger theme. It's like now it's like, oh, this used to be a beautiful piece of music that I wrote my PhD thesis on and it was art, but now it's just the ringtone that everybody gets annoyed by.
Funny story, my washing machine, which was a Samsung, plays this song when it's done, and I've invented lyrics for it, right? Like, and now my wash is done, and I am giving you the new clothes.
It turns
jaunty. Out that is Schubert. It is called Die Forelle. You can get orchestras and things playing it, and it's nothing funnier than hearing an orchestra play your washing machine song. So yeah, they're out there. Andy is telling the truth. It's a real thing.
Samsung really loves having very music. Actually, all of my Japanese appliances are very.
Or all the Asian, especially Korean appliances like to play music at the end. Yeah, absolutely.
I have Samsung. I have the Samsung washer and dryer, and then I have a rice cooker and a water boiler and and everything sings to me.
Oh yeah,
like whenever it's done,
my rice cooker plays "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star."
Yeah.
Here
so, and then
he's Die Forelle.
Yeah, which is like the trout or something is the name.
Trout. Okay, so there are lyrics. Do you sing this?
I have no. Mine are more laundry themed.
Let a burly German man wash your towels.
And let me tell you, the best thing about the Samsung implementation is it goes on forever, and it gets to the end, and you think it's really over, long. And then it keeps going. Right? That's the best. And you're like, what are you doing, Samsung? Why did you have the extra
reprise at the end? A little reprise.
It's amazing. It's just so charming that obviously there is a philosophy there that's like, we want our appliances to be friendly and part of your home. And one of the things that they'll do is they'll play music to you. Not thinking like they'll play the same 18 notes through their little tiny speaker every time you press the power button for as long as you have the washing machine, right? Like maybe not, maybe don't do that.
A while ago, my Google Mac speaker, I got a firmware update so that when you connect to it, it used to make this really like loud like bass note, right? Now it does this arpeggio that, to my mind, sounds exactly like the intro, like little flourish before the song in Hamilton, "You'll Be Back." So I always imagine like I had to rename my speaker King George because it's like,
we'll be back.
I will be back.
Wait and see.
Human brains are weird, man.
You'll remember you belong to me.
And when push comes to
shove, now your laundry's done. And now your laundry's done.
You guys. Just a reminder that if you were using Twitterific or Tweetbot, and of course, Twitter unceremoniously pulled the plug on those apps, Apple requires them to offer you a refund for any outstanding time. But those companies are small and they are beloved by our community. And they have asked that you not ask for your refund. It could put them it could literally put them out of business. Both apps now have screens. Here's the Twitterific screen, thanks to John Gruber, explaining that you have a choice. And if you have an active subscription, Apple says, you have to offer a refund, but they give you a button that says, I'm satisfied with what I got out of Twitterific, and I do not want a refund at this time.
It's all going to get charged against the company, and they're going to have a huge. Those debt. Refunds will kill them.
Yeah, they're not big companies. So I would suggest, as does Gruber, as do all of us. Here's Tapbots. Now, one of the things Tapbots is lucky because they had Ivory, which is a Mastodon version of Tweetbot, which is a great app. So you could transfer your subscription to Ivory, which is what I did, just to support Ivory. But at the bottom of all of these, I want a prorated refund. You could do that. You could get your money back, but just a note of warning. It's going to be hard on those companies, and
you got to understand your money's not in this. It's in their app and in this device. It's
and listen, the way Elon did it was so horrific, but he's become the king of horrific. They just pulled the plug without telling him, without warning him. A week later, they said, "Yeah, we did it because you broke the rules." To which they said, "But we've been here for so many years. What rule do we break?" And then they hemmed and hawed, and they said, "This one we just added yesterday." And it was just a nightmarish bad faith thing. And certainly within Twitter's rights to say we don't want third-party apps. They actually have done it before. But to do it that way was not very nice. So just a note. Don't, if you can afford it, say, I don't need the refund. Keep the money. You deserve it. All right. The king of horrific, isn't he? Unbelievable. Let's take a little break. Speaking of subscriptions, I just want to do a little plug before we get to the picks of the week. First, I want to do a thank you to our Club Twit members, because a lot of them are making a big difference. As you might have noted, there was only one ad in this show, and this has been a problem over the last few months. Podcast advertising globally has declined. NPR took a hit of $300 million and laid off 10% of their staff because of it. And we're feeling the pinch just like everybody else. But we have something very special. We have a club, and thank you to Club Twit members for making a big difference in our lives, the lives of our staff. What do you get for $7? It's all $7 a month. It's nothing. A couple of cups of coffee, $1 less than a blue check on Twitter, and you get so much more. Ad-free versions of all the shows, this show and more, plus special shows in the Twit Plus feed, like Micah Sargent's Hands on Macintosh. We have a Hands on Windows show with Paul Thurrott, the Untitled Linux show. There's special events that go on in the club all the time. We do triangulations. In fact, we could only do triangulation thanks to the club, because it's a show we don't do all the time, so there's no advertisers for it. It costs us money to do it, of course, but the club members foot the bill. Thank you, club members. $7 a month. Oh, did I mention you also get access to the best darn social network in the world, our Club Twit Discord, with Elon as Super Mario. So if the Discord is a great place to hang, not only during shows, and of course we're in the MacBreak weekly chat. We have a stage where we can now give you a chance to ask questions, and we have conversations about every topic that Club Twit members like to talk about, from beer, wine, cocktails, to coding, to comics, to Linux, to movies and music and software and travel. It's all in there, and great conversations going on all the time. I hang out in the coding section. We have some great coders in there, and they are an inspiration to me. So that's my pitch. I'm not very good at begging. I hate pledge breaks on public broadcasting, but honestly, I'm only doing it because we need it. twit.tv/clubtwit. Thank you so much for your support. Oh, and brand new. Now, is this club only? So I also have a big announcement. Thank you for reminding me, John Ashley. Thanks to club members, Home Theater Geeks is back. It is a club-only show. Every Thursday, you can actually listen in as Scott and his guests talk about home theater. This was a show that many of you asked us to bring back. And thanks to the donations, the very generous donations of Club Twit members, we have now brought Scott Wilkinson's Home Theater Geeks back in the club. All right. So thank you, Club Twit members. twit.tv/clubtwit. Hey, everybody. Leo Laporte here. I am the founder and one of the hosts at the Twit Podcast Network. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we do here at Twit, because I think it's unique. And I think for anybody who is bringing a product or a service to a tech audience, you need to know about what we do here at Twit. We've built an amazing audience of engaged, intelligent, affluent listeners who listen to us and trust us when we recommend a product. Our mission statement as Twit is to build a highly engaged community of tech enthusiasts. Boy, already your ears should be perking up at that, because highly engaged is good for you. tech enthusiasts, if that's who you're looking for, this is the place. We do it by offering them the knowledge they need to understand and use technology in today's world. And I hear from our audience all the time, part of that knowledge comes from our advertisers. We are very careful. We pick advertisers with great products, great services, with integrity, and introduce them to our audience with authenticity and genuine enthusiasm. And that makes our host-read ads different from anything else you can buy. We are literally bringing you to the attention of our audience and giving you a big, fat endorsement. We like to create partnerships with trusted brands who are in it for the long run, long-term partners that want to grow with us. And we have so many great success stories. Tim Broom, who founded IT Pro TV in 2013, started advertising with us on day one, has been with us ever since. He said, quote, "We would not be where we are today without the TWiT network." I think the proof is in the pudding. Advertisers like IT Pro TV and Audible that have been with us for more than 10 years, they stick around because their ads work. And honestly, isn't that why you're buying advertising? You get a lot with TWiT. We have a very full service attitude. We almost think of it as kind of artisanal advertising, boutique advertising. You'll get a full service continuity team. People who are on the phone with you, who are in touch with you, who support you with everything from copywriting to graphic design. So you are not alone in this. We embed our ads into the shows. They're not added later. They're part of the shows. In fact, often they're such a part of our shows that our other hosts will chime in on the ad saying, "Yeah, I love that." Or just the other day, one of our hosts said, "Man, I really got to buy that." That's an additional benefit to you because you're hearing people our audience trusts saying, "Yeah, that sounds great." We always over-deliver on impressions, so you know you're going to get the impressions you expect. The ads are unique every time. We don't pre-record them and roll them in. We are genuinely doing those ads in the middle of the show. We'll give you great onboarding services. Ad tech with pod sites that's free for direct clients. Gives you a lot of reporting, gives you a great idea of how well your ads are working. You'll get courtesy commercials. You actually can take our ads and share them across social media and landing pages. That really extends the reach. There are other free goodies too, including mentions in our weekly newsletter that's sent to thousands of fans, engaged fans who really want to see this stuff. We give you bonus ads and social media promotion too. So if you want to be a long-term partner, introduce your product to a savvy, engaged tech audience. Visit twit.tv/advertise. Check out those testimonials. Mark McCrary is the CEO of Authentic. You probably know him, one of the biggest original podcast advertising companies. We've been with him for 16 years. Mark said the feedback from many advertisers over 16 years across a range of product categories, everything from razors to computers, is that if ads and podcasts are going to work for a brand, they're going to work on Twitch shows. I'm very proud of what we do because it's honest, it's got integrity, it's authentic, and it really is a great introduction to our audience of your brand. Our listeners are smart, they're engaged, they're tech savvy, they're dedicated to our network. And that's one of the reasons we only work with high integrity partners that we've personally and thoroughly vetted. I have absolute approval on everybody. If you've got a great product, I want to hear from you. Elevate your brand by reaching out today at advertise@twit.tv. Break out of the advertising norm. Grow your brand with host-read ads on twit.tv. Visit twit.tv/advertise for more details, or you can email us advertise@twit.tv if you're ready to launch your campaign now. I can't wait to see your product, so give us a ring. Now it's time for our picks of the week. I don't usually do a pick because the whole show is my pick. So there, but I did want to mention this because it's only good for a few more days, and it's only for T-Mobile customers. But if you're a soccer fan, T-Mobile Tuesdays is offering a 1-year subscription to MLS Season Pass on Apple TV for free. You obviously have to be a T-Mobile customer, but that was good for me because I actually would never pay for the MLS Season Pass, but getting it for free, I'm going to watch some of it. I think it's good. So just to mention, only good through the 14th. So you got a few more days if you haven't done it yet. One more week. You need the T-Mobile Tuesdays app on your iPhone or Android phone to do that. Jason Snell, your pick of the, and this is not an ad for T-Mobile. I have no association with T-Mobile except I'm a customer. Your pick of the week, Jason.
Hi.
There's the song.
I was just in New Zealand. It's far away.
Yes.
And
it's in a different day.
It's in a different day. In fact, funny, you look it up and it says it's plus 21, which is that's a lot to add, but you could also just subtract 3, and
it's a lot easier.
It's like going from New York to San Francisco. It's from San Francisco to New Zealand. It's
right,
until we do spring forward, it'll be 3 hours, which is nice. But it's tomorrow, which is weird. So anyway, what I'm saying is time zones. How do they work? And if you don't know how time zones work, I recommend a really nice iOS and through Catalyst macOS app called Zones: time zone conversion from Squircle apps. Add in the cities that you care about. It shows you the times and the weather, I think, actually, in the different places that you are. Will sync between your devices over the cloud. It'll give you little reminders. Very simple app, but it's nice. It does the job. And if you are somebody who is just trying to do the math in your head or on your fingers for when the time zone, where am I? When is it? What time is it? How do I get there? Where is it where you are? Can I call this person now? Are they going to be there? Oh, it's daytime. Oh, but it's going to be Saturday. That's confusing, right? Like time zones, they're very confusing. Use an app and then you will be less confused.
Be like the Insane Clown Posse and use it. Actually, I love this. It has an iMessage. Is it a sticker? I don't know what you would call it, but so when you want to set a time with somebody, you could say it's this time your time, this time my time. That's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Mac,
just
iPhone,
a real
iPad.
simple, nice, friendly, helpful app if you struggle with time zones or going to places that have weird time
From
zones.
Squircle Apps, LLP, zones.
Zones.
Time zone conversion. Good luck finding it. That's always an adventure. You know what? Go to our show notes. That's the best place. twit.tv/MBW. We'll put a link in the show notes, right? And then you can just jump right.
I think if you search zones, it's the second one that comes up or something. But yeah.
Mr. Andy Anatko, pick of the week.
Mine's kind of a revisit of a previous pick, but there is news about the Playdate. We've talked about that a little earlier today about Panic's like really quirky, interesting handheld game console that's got a crank. It's Jason has one too. I gotta say I love this device.
So great.
I have to admit I took a bit of a flutter on it because obviously you had to pre-order it. It's not cheap, $180. Plus it's like, okay, they've never done a mechanical device an actual physical device before. Are they going to actually ship it? And oh my goodness, there's so much drama over so many different like retro style like game systems that got a lot of interest and attention and investment, but then never shipped. The only problem is it does ship. The only problem is that it's so popular that if you order it today, you still have to wait until late 2023 in order to get it. But I absolutely love it. It's the build quality it's not cheap at all. It feels like a very high quality product. I thought that maybe this crank would be like the first thing to break, but it is solid as anything. Reviewers earlier were complaining that the screen is not backlit. That's a fair cop. But the thing is, it is like super high contrast, so that if you have any amount of light whatsoever, it's going to be very, very pretty and easy to read. And it's part of what makes it kind of unique. The fact that it's not like another color display that's not terribly great, but maybe okay. And it also means that the battery lasts weeks and weeks and weeks, and that it's super, super flat. And the games are exactly as I hope them to be. I'm not the person who spends weeks on a $60 AAA game getting myself sort of all like worked up about making the next level or solving all the problems or speed running or anything like that. I want something that will give me a good half hour of amusement from time to time. I want something in my pocket when I've got a day in the city. I know that I'm going to have to like find a little distraction, some fun throughout the day. Absolutely everything that I wanted it to be. So I'm very, very happy with it. But two really interesting pieces of news today. Today they announced that they have finally their on-device game store called Catalog. The development system for this is really super open. You can go up since day one. You can go to itch.io and buy like or free or for pay third-party games on this thing, and a lot of super creativity has gone into this stuff. So there's a lot of games on here you won't see anyplace else. But now they have their own curated catalog alongside that. They're not locking anybody out, but it's an easier way to find the super top quality games, and the trailers for it, the information about it is a lot better than what you'll find on itch.io. So super high of recommendation. Also recommendation that maybe you want to order it sooner rather than later, because the other announcement they made today is that remember that they planned this way before COVID, way before supply line shortages, and so they feel as though they have to raise the price by $20 starting in April. But they're telling people about a month in advance that the price goes up on April 1st from $179 to $200. So if you are on the fence and you're sort of thinking about getting it, maybe you want to order it right now. They do offer 100% refunds anytime before it ships, so that you can, if you can afford to park $180 for several months, park it while you think about it. And if 6 months from now you decide that that was stupid, I don't really want this anymore, they will refund your money. Again, another thing that's different from this from other like retro console projects, where people take your money and then, well, they're gone. They spend it trying to pay the rental fee on their office furniture. No, that's you can trust these people. So I do recommend you give it a float. The only other recommendation I'm going to make is that you can, for an extra $20, buy this magnetic little cover for it. I absolutely recommend that you get it, because I don't think the surface of this screen is going to stand up to tossing in your bag, tossing in your pocket willy-nilly. Whereas if you put this on it, I've had this for several months now, and there's just not a scratch on it. So that's definitely a good investment. I think it's this plus the case is $200 at March prices. So again, high recommendation.
I love it that Krista Morgan, the Panic Video and Podcasts host, is wearing a Untitled Goose Game sweater in the video for the new.
It's all connected.
It's all connected, because this is, of course, from Panic, same people who publish Untitled.
Oh, I forgot to mention that you do get 24 games with it. They commissioned a season of games, so that it's not as though like that was part of the risk mitigation. That okay, at minimum, I know that I will be getting 24 games. So basically for $7.50 each. For a couple of months, I get to play interesting games at the rate of 2 a week, and I get a free player with it, so to speak. But there's now a library about 400 games for it. So again, a lot of really creative people have done some great stuff. Not just stuff that uses the crank either. So the crank isn't just like this gimmick that spawns a whole bunch of, oh good, another fishing game. Oh good, a space fishing game. And now here's a fishing game in which you're fishing for. Okay, thank you.
Playdate is at play.date if you would like to order. Alex Lindsay, your pick of the week.
So, I got back into podcasting. I know it sounds crazy.
What are you talking about?
Everyone's going out. I go back in. We work on Michael Krasny's show. So Michael Krasny has this podcast. Leo's been on it. We're going to track.
That's a good show
here.
Yeah.
It's a great show. It's a great interview, and we bring people in from all over, and a lot of folks. A lot of them are pretty high profile, but they, oftentimes it's amazing how under equipped they are, even though they've been showing up on CNN and other things like that. And so we send them out mics and we do the best we can to make it sound better, but it still comes back and we have to do a little bit of work on it and to make it sound as good as it could, with what's happening. So we send out some MV7 mics, but even then we still want to do a little bit of work on it. And I just have to say that I don't know how I would do this every week without isotope. so a lot of people, isotope, I use RX10 and a little bit of ozone. And it's just like, oh, I need a de-esser. I need to pull this out. I need to fix this thing. I need to, there's a little bit of clicking in here. There's a little bit of something else. And it's just this RX especially is just something that I use on every show to fix something.
Me too, Alex. Me too. It's like magic. The de-reverb, if you get somebody in an echoey room and you're like, well, this audio is unusable, even if it's a vague echo, and you press a button and walk away for like 20 minutes and it's magic. It just goes away. It's shocking how good it is.
Which bundle should I get?
You should get the most expensive one.
Oh, thank you. Exactly. Okay. It's that or a Playdate.
I have a subscription. I don't remember it being that high. I can't find it right. I was trying to figure out what I'm paying every week every month for it. It's like $20 a month or something like that. And I have RX10 and Ozone are the two that I have there. So it's some kind of, you can buy it for, I think the RX is not as expensive. I have this bundle, and it's worked really, really well for me. Yeah. And I just, I tried to do it without it. I got a demo of it and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. And then I tried to do work without it, and I was like, "Oh, this is taking so much time. whatever it costs, make it go away." And so,
does it have an editor in it, or no? This is not the editor.
No, I use it in Logic.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have it in Logic. So
so it's all plugins. You could just use it.
Yeah, but there is an app that has all of them in it that you can use, and I actually pre-process my files in their app. So there is an app, but you can also just put it in.
And what do you cut? What do you cut the show in?
I'm mostly using Logic mostly using Logic basically when I'm on the Mac, but I will pre-process my files. Even if I'm using Fairwrite on the iPad, I'll pre-process the files in the iZotope app. I do it in advance because that way I can completely control what it looks like, and then playback is super smooth. I keep my originals, but I'll process the files and then drop them into the editor, especially for like de-reverb, because that is an incredibly intensive calculation to do that magic.
Yeah, I think I'm on a studio, and it does take like a second when I hit play. There's like a second of it because I'll put in this last one had de-esser, de-plosive, it said de-esser, de-plosive, de-reverb.
It slows it down a little.
And it just takes, you hear this like weird little echo for the first couple seconds, like one or two seconds, and then it just plays out after that. And they're super powerful. And again, I find that the amount of quality, the amount of work that I can do after that, I send it to a friend of mine, Mickey. Mickey does after if I can't fix it with RX and Ozone, I send it to the Philippines to have it worked on. And so that's the only.
It's funny because I was thinking of going to the Philippines to be worked on myself. So
yeah, it's exactly. I have a ringer. I have an audio ringer in Manila. Yeah.
Gosh, this stuff's been around for so long. I think I used it in the early days of Twit.
I've used it on and off, but now that I'm doing it every week, and I'm I do this one kind of myself, and it's been good. I have to admit I was getting a little rusty in Logic, and now I got all the keystrokes back, and I'm kind of cutting through stuff, and it's my final pass before I start doing the compression on the whole thing is to take all these Ozone ones. And I usually pull them back a little bit. They're a little aggressive, but I go through there and kind of process everything, and it just makes a big difference, especially for the far end of the podcast.
Well, God willing, I'll never have to do it myself again. But if I do, I'm keeping this. I'm bookmarking this, and I'll keep it around. iZotope, iZotope.com, and I did just to price it out. If you buy everything, it's $1,300, $1,249.
I don't have everything.
$50. Yeah, you don't need everything. Don't have everything. But I'm just checking, just to see. And I am told that they have regular deals, so
they do.
Yeah, keep an eye peeled for an iZotope.
They have regular deals, and they have a subscription. And I think that the only thing that I've used outside of iZotope that really works is called Synaptic, and it's called Unveil. And so if iZotope can't fix it, like if it's really broken, I've had some pretty echoey rooms, and Unveil will do some crazy work, but it's like $800 and does one thing.
Yeah, Adobe's working on something. They've got a web thing that they're doing now.
Yeah, their little podcast thing.
The podcast, that's got a machine learning thing where you can upload, and depending on the track, that's like magic. So we may be at the threshold of like a whole new era. And iZotope has a lot of machine learning based stuff in those plugins too. So the ability to take something that sounds terrible and press a button and have it come out sounding good is rapidly approaching. It's great news for all of us who have friends who are recording podcasts and they forgot which microphone they were selecting.
Or which end to talk into, the blue is the killer. It's like there's like 6 settings and like one way to do it, and if you do it any other way, you end up like doing lots of stuff.
I have friends who say I've got a perfect room to record a podcast in. It's all glass walls.
Oh yeah,
and
great. Perfect.
No,
don't do
so
it.
Good.
No. Yeah, it's
perfect, beautiful.
Great.
I can hear you many times.
Yeah,
I just bought the to test Rode's new NT1, the 5th generation, just came out with 32-bit recording. So we're going to show that and test that on Sunday with Ask the Tech Guys. If you're looking for a good microphone, what we're really going to talk about is what 32-bit float recording is and why it's a good thing.
So good.
Yeah. Should I upgrade? I have a mix USB Pre 3, but it's not second generation. And should I spend $800-900 to get the second generation with 32-bit float recording? No.
Yes, the real thing. So here's the thing.
This is the sound devices.
At home, at the office, I don't know if you need it.
No.
I will say that the killer thing about the MixPre 3 2 is the noise assist. So it's another plugin. It's a $300 plugin that you add to your MixPre.
Yeah.
And I mean, right now you're hearing me through it. Like I have fans and things, and
it just cleans it all up, huh?
Just makes it all go away. So on our kind of mid-range and higher end kits for 090, we send out a MixPre with that noise assist turned on, and it just solves a whole bunch of problems. A little bit of the echo, a little bit of the reverb, and all of the fan noise that's out there. That's there. So the mix, that's the big thing. I mean, so
that's firmware that you put on the MixPre, because it's a hardware.
It's a plugin that you buy for it, and it needs more processing power. So the MixPre 3, by the first one, didn't have the processing power to do it. So basically what Noise Assist does is a lot of what Cedar does. And I actually think that Noise Assist sounds better than Cedar most of the time. Noise Assist and Cedar is the big one. Like that's the one we used to use for everything to clean things up. But the Noise Assist, I think, is a softer touch. And I with Cedar, if you turn it up too much, I hear it. I can hear the bits, as it cuts into it. But with Noise Assist, I can turn it up pretty high. I don't know how easy it is for me to.
That's okay.
See if I can turn this off for you to do.
We should save this. That could be a pick for another day. You already did your pick. I don't want to add a whole nother pick to it. But
can you hear that?
Yeah.
And just hold on.
That's what we need here.
Actually, so it works.
Well, if I ever get into podcasting, I will call you and we'll figure it all out. Go. Yeah, I'll have to figure it all out. Mr. Alex Lindsay does this great thing called Office Hours, and you just got a little sample right there. Little Office Hours sample.
That's what every day looks like. Is just fiddling with something and talking through it.
Yeah,
yeah.
Today's show was the lower thirds show where you dissect.
We literally just look at other people's lower thirds and talk about. We talked a lot about construction. We talked about what we like about them, what we don't like about them, the technical pieces of it. We definitely like digging in.
Just to be clear, the people's lower third items on a video track, not their actual lower third.
Oh, not their body lower third. No.
Right,
they used to call it the chyron.
Their knees. Yeah, the knees are just look at those knees.
Not the torso though. That's not the torso.
That's the middle torso. Lower third, knees down.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Capri pants are very, very big in the Office Hours community.
Yeah, exactly.
And then on Thursday is going to be Ruthless Reviews. So I suspect
specifically
this is what people like the best about you guys is when you're snarky. But there's a lot of other information too. Right?
The cool thing is that this week we're talking about 5. We're talking about surround audio in general, and just what the different ones are and what all the numbers mean 5.1, 5.14, 7.14, all that stuff, and then we're getting ready. We're going to have some other experts on. So we're all talking about it first before the experts come on. So that's a couple weeks out. And then on Thursday, we're talking about not just the Ruthless Reviews, but how it looks in HDR. So we're slowly moving to streaming HDR to YouTube. And so how do people look with their lighting, not just in regular SDR, but how they look in HDR, because it's unforgiving. And then on Friday, you'll finally get to see what our sets look like. You'll see what the rest of my room looks like on Friday. So we show, because a lot of us look relatively normal in front of it, but anytime you see over the shoulder of all of us, it's like this giant, like all these monitors and everything else. And so usually people don't see that. So we're going to
turn the camera around. I love it.
Yeah, we're going to turn it around and show people what it looks like.
Officehours.global is the website. They put them up on YouTube, but you could also join the Zoom calls if you want to be part of it. All the information is there, officehours.global, including schedules. Mr. Andy Anako, GBH this week?
No, I just found out I just got bumped because there's a big local news story that just dropped today. So they're going to be using my time to talk about that and other things. But go to WGBHnews.org to listen to what I'm sure is going to be a great show tomorrow, even without me. And you go to WGBHnews.org and search my name and you'll find my previous tech segments. The next one I think is next week or the week after that.
Big news story here actually just come in. Apparently GarageBand has a security flaw in there. Apple's pushing an update out. So
No.
A rare update to GarageBand. I would normally say, yeah, come on, how big a deal could this be? But we have now learned that the LastPass hack involved getting in through an unpatched version of Plex in a senior developer's laptop at home. So it is important that you update these other things that you've got running. He hadn't updated Plex in years, and as a result, LastPass was hacked. Yeah. So it's important. Keep those updates.
Have we talked about the iTrust hack that happened last month?
I don't know about that one. What's that?
There was I'm sorry, but there's an e-commerce service that a lot of commerce sites use to
$36 million.
Yeah, that basically, so you don't know that your transactions are going through this third party that does verification. And it turns out that company got themselves hacked to the tune of 30 million.
Nice. 30
million user data. I got a notification from Have I Been Pwned saying,
oh yeah, I did too. I got that notification too. It was for something else, but it's nice, isn't it? Get those notifications.
It's nice to know that something horrible has happened that's out of your control. Just change all your passwords everywhere and you'll be good.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Ignorance is very peaceful.
Yes. Mr. Jason Snell, welcome home. A little like a culture shock, or how hard has it been to get back in the set?
I mean, I just haven't. My solution is just not to leave the house, and then it's fine. Although I did have to drive somewhere. And I was on the other side of the road I was the same side of the car, though, since I was a passenger before and I was driving this time. Yeah, no, it's great. It is always a shock, as you know, Leo, from all your travel to get back to your life after you've been out of it for 2 weeks. So then good news is it was a real vacation for me. I didn't think about work at all. And that was nice. Now I get that moment where like I'm serious what I said at the top of the show, which is like anything happen, because it's like I just wasn't paying attention. But it was good refresher and great to see. We've been planning that trip since before the pandemic, and then it got delayed, and I'm so glad we finally got a chance to see that country. It was beautiful and eat some meat pies.
That's funny because we're going on a pandemic delayed trip in a couple of weeks. We had planned a cruise in 2020 from Singapore, round trip to Singapore and the Philippines and Hong Kong and stuff. Of course, all of Asia was shut down. They canceled it. They canceled it again. Finally, we said, screw Asia. We're going to go to Europe. So we're going to Europe in a couple of weeks. Same thing. We paid for this in 2019, right? I mean, sometimes these things happen. Anyway, I'm glad you got to go on your trip. Welcome home.
Thank you for having those guys fill in for me. They did a great job. And yeah, it's great.
Find out what Jason's up to by going to sixcolors.com/Jason. And I say that because no one's got enough time to talk about all the shows Jason.
No, it's AI based now. I just have an AI speak with my voice and it watches the shows for me.
And I'm tired of covering your butt, Jason. Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, we're friends, but
so you're back on all of them now. Yeah.
Yeah, the fill-ins were the last 2 weeks, and now I'm back. I'm back to the grind. Only 2 podcasts today, only 1 yesterday.
Oh my God.
I'm easing in. Oh
my God. This is why I stayed out of the whole podcast thing, because it's just nuts. It's
a good idea. Yeah. Don't do it. You host too many shows that way.
Don't do it. Thank you, Jason, Andy. Thank you, Alex. Thank you all for joining us. We do MacBreak Weekly of Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC. That's when we start the show. You can watch the live stream at live.twit.tv. If you're watching live, chat with us live at irc.twit.tv. You can use your browser, but it is a true IRC server. So if you have a client, you can use that too. If you're a Discordian and you're in the club, join the Club Twit Discord. There's always a Discord going on around every live event and every live show. After the fact, on-demand versions of this show available at our website, twit.tv/MBW. There's audio and video. You can also watch the video on YouTube. There's a dedicated MacBreak Weekly channel. And you can subscribe in your favorite podcast player and get it automatically the minute it's available. I'm sure we will have some lovely album art. Thanks to Midjourney and the prompt master, Alex Lindsay. And if not, well, sorry. He's busy.
Name, that's all I mean.
He's doing some stuff. Well, I'll tell you the name in a second. But first, it's time for me to tell you to get back to work because break time is over. Bye-bye.
Hey, folks, I'm Ant Pruitt, and I have a question for you. How do you thank your hardworking team? With a Club Twit corporate subscription plan, of course. Show your appreciation and reward your tech team with a subscription to Club Twit. Keep everyone informed and entertained with podcasts covering the latest in tech. With the Club Twit subscription, they get access to all of our podcasts ad-free. And they also get access to our members-only Discord, access to exclusive outtakes and behind-the-scenes footage and special content like the fireside chats that I enjoy hosting. Plus, they also get shows like Hands on Mac, Hands on Windows, and the Untitled Linux Show. So go to twit.tv/clubtwit and look for corporate plans for complete details.